Back at 18, I was forced to drop out and ended up tightening screws in the factory. In the workshop, the factory owner's son puffed on a cigarette and asked with a roguish grin, "I'm starting a business, who's willing to work with me?" In the dead silence, I raised my hand. My coworkers said I was out of my mind, my cousin laughed at my delusions of grandeur, and my parents scolded me for not earning a steady income. LMAO, what do you guys know? 20 years later. He could be on the Forbes rich list. 1. Back to being 18, I just finished the school withdrawal procedures. In the cramped living room, my father's yelling was deafening. "Why did you steal from others? You've completely shamed our entire family." My mother roared in agreement. "All students in the same class, yet look how much better your cousin performs. If it weren't for her speaking up for you this time, you'd be in jail right now." Scenes from my past life gradually surfaced. I was falsely accused of theft by classmates. Without verifying the facts, the teacher pinned the crime on me and sent me to the principal's office. Coincidentally, the school was cracking down on theft, and the principal decided to make an example of me, immediately threatening to send me to the police station. My cousin Ching Sharu tearfully pleaded for leniency on my behalf. In the end, the principal relented, allowing me to withdraw from school voluntarily and dropping the matter. At that time, I regarded Ching Sharu as my savior. It wasn't until years later, when I met a high school classmate while street vending, that I learned the truth. The entire theft accusation had been orchestrated by her from the very beginning. Seeing me distracted, my father raised his hand as if to hit me. I didn't dodge and took the slap squarely. Every part of my body ached. They had beaten me many times before this. "Pack your things and get out tomorrow. Whether you live or die is your own business." I nodded and silently returned to my room. The so-called room was just a small partitioned space next to the kitchen. The lighting was dim, offering no privacy. Just a wall away was my younger brother Lu Shuikong's room. Inside was a large bed and a computer, an extremely rare household item in this era. It was a birthday gift from his parents. Only at this moment did I finally feel the reality of being reborn. I had thought before that if I could return to the past, I would definitely prove my innocence and fight to continue my education. But now the die is cast, and I am powerless to fight against the wicked. But it's alright. Besides studying, I have other paths to take. Early the next morning, I left home. My luggage consisted of just a travel bag and $20 I had saved for a long time. I boarded the bus and headed straight for the city. In my past life, I was weak and incompetent, after being forced to drop out of school. My parents scolded and beat me every day until they grew utterly tired of me and found me a job through connections. Ching Sharu's mother, my second aunt, worked as an accountant at a machine tool factory in the city and took me there to work as a factory girl, screwing bolts every day with room and board provided. This monotonous, repetitive, and extremely low-paying job consumed 4 years of my youth. Nowadays, without her introduction, I take the initiative to enter the factory. Following the foreman, I put on gloves, picked up tools, and walked into the familiar yet unfamiliar workshop, because in this lifetime, my purpose is, fuck, who the hell stepped on me? An unhappy growl startled me, and I quickly lifted my foot. The polished leather shoe already bore a footprint from my step. Following the foot upward, I froze in sudden realization. The young man had streaked yellow hair, a dragon tattoo on his arm, furrowed brows, and a fierce expression. But I'm not afraid. I've seen him dressed in suits in financial magazines, with handsome features and a gentle smile, completely different from now. "Boss, she's new here." The manager turned to me. "Apologize now." I stared at him intently. "I'm sorry." He was staring at me too. After a few seconds of eye contact, he suddenly asked, "Aren't you afraid of me?" I shook my head. Interesting. Chuda licked his teeth. "Little factory girl. Staying out of my way won't do you any harm." With that, he turned and walked away. "I'm not a factory girl," I called at his retreating, arrogant figure. "My name is Lu Ku, too. Tightening screws really isn't a good job. Just 2 days in, and I already have 3 blisters on my hands. What's worse, my second aunt spotted me." She feigned enthusiasm. "So this is where you've been hiding? Your parents didn't tell me. You should have said something earlier. I could have found you a better job." I sneered inwardly. Isn't this the great job you found for me in my past life? But I didn't show it. "Auntie, you go ahead with your work. We'll talk another day." Unexpectedly, the next day I saw Ching Sharu. "Xiao Ku, where have you been these past few days?" I was so worried. She held my hand, her surface-level acting skills even more polished than her mother's. Can't blame me for not seeing her true nature back then. "Just tightening screws here," I replied nonchalantly. I don't know much about that. I came to share good news. I ranked in the top 30 school-wide in the third mock exam. My homeroom teacher said if I perform normally in the college entrance exam, I'll definitely get into a good university. To come all the way just to say these things to my face, what a joy indeed. Is that so? I smiled. Then have you decided on a major? If you don't choose the right major, even if you get into a good university, you won't find a good job. Qing Sharu got anxious. That's impossible. How is it impossible? I gave an example. Look at Uncle Wang in our neighborhood. He went to university in the capital back then, and now he's just running a small shop in his hometown. Maybe you'll end up. That's still better than tightening screws. TCH, finally couldn't keep up the act anymore. Her expression darkened noticeably. After a pause, she threw out a "I'm leaving first" and hurried away. Fuck. A familiar low growl sounded. I looked up to see Qing Sharu bump into someone. She stepped back repeatedly. Sorry." Chuda had a fierce, menacing expression. Qing Sharu was so frightened she scurried away. He crossed his arms and tilted his head to look at me. "You understand university majors?" "Yeah." He seemed intrigued. "Then tell me, which major has good job prospects?" "Computer science." The late 1990s was when the modern internet boom was just taking shape, and Chuda entered the internet field shortly after. His eyes lit up. But he quickly regained his nonchalance and scoffed lightly. "The factory girl has quite some opinions." I stared at him steadily. "My name is Luke." He smiled. The fierce expression instantly softened considerably. "Got it, little factory girl." He stared at me, his eyes full of amusement. Clearly teasing me, suddenly raised his hand and flicked my forehead. "My name is Chuda." 3. After that, during my free time, I would look for Chuda's figure around the factory. I vaguely remember that shortly after I joined the factory, Chuda left to start his own business. He tried recruiting people from the factory, but because he looked intimidating and usually appeared unambitious, no one was willing to work with him, from what I know. The few people he recruited later all rose to prominence along with him. In this second life, I don't seek great wealth, only to stand at the forefront of the times, so I won't have to worry about making ends meet in middle age. After careful observation, I realized Chuda wasn't as unreliable as he appeared. Most of the time, he sat in front of his computer reading books and writing code. People at the factory didn't understand. They all thought he was playing games. Someone gossiped to me. Don't be fooled by Chuda's impressive position managing people at the factory. Eventually his family's business will be taken over by his brother. Yes, Chuda has an older brother studying abroad. In my past life, including me, everyone thought he'd have a hard time after his brother returned. Having returned to the past, I know things won't turn out that way, so I retorted to that person, "No, he'll become even more successful in the future." After finishing work in the evening, I deliberately lingered for a while and took a detour to the corridor outside Chuda's office. The lights were on inside, and Chuda was still typing away. I watched for a moment, then turned to leave. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. "Hey," I was called to stop. In the dimly lit corridor, Chuda leaned lazily against the wall, tilting his head to look at me. "You don't need to pass by here to get back to the dorm, do you?" Having my thoughts exposed, I felt a bit flustered. I hurriedly lowered my head, unsure how to explain. Chuda walked step by step toward me, stopping very close. I caught the pleasant scent coming from him, subconsciously raised my head. His eyes smiled, his handsome face relaxed, devoid of its usual ferocity. In the dimly lit atmosphere, he suddenly bent down and paused by my ear. "This isn't the first time I've caught you, little sister." His lowered voice was hoarse, carrying a slight vibration from his chest. "You're not secretly in love with your brother, are you?" 4. I stepped back repeatedly, and no, of course not. He raised an eyebrow, his eyes full of teasing. I awkwardly averted my gaze. "I was just curious about what you were doing." "Oh." He straightened up. "Did you figure it out then?" I shook my head. He smiled again. For some reason, he seemed to be smiling a lot tonight, tilted his chin slightly, signaling me to enter. "Then I'll be merciful and invite you to take a look." I obediently walked in. The computer screen was on, with several programming books piled beside it. I deliberately asked, "What kind of book is this?" Truthfully, I was quite curious. With Chuda's intelligence, he could have easily passed the college entrance exams to attend university. There was no need for him to stay at the factory teaching himself, being misunderstood and looked down upon by those around him. Leaning against the desk, he casually picked up a book. "If you had studied computer science in college, these are the things you would have learned." I stared fixedly at him. He suddenly scoffed lightly. You've been studying all this time, haven't you? I was taken aback. Yeah, why did you stop? I licked my lips. I didn't intend to hide it either. After a brief pause, I told him about being falsely accused of theft and forced to drop out of school. He didn't react with indignant fervor, pressuring me to fight against the wrongdoers, reclaim my innocence, or seek revenge. He just listened quietly without saying a word. He lit a cigarette and took a deep drag. He let out a low laugh, almost self-mocking. When no one believes you, anything you say is wrong. The warm yellow light in the room flickered slightly as Chuda leaned against the window, his features obscured in the shadows, his expression unreadable. I really wanted to say something. For example, I believe in you. When are you starting your business? Can you take me with you? Before I could speak, he had already crushed the cigarette. Once again, he regained his arrogant demeanor. Little factory girl, he called out to me, looking up. I'll give you half a day off tomorrow. Come with me to a place. Seeing I was about to introduce myself again, he immediately interrupted. For the first time, he called my name, Luke. Though his face was full of impatience and awkwardness, I found it somewhat endearing. Even without knowing where we were going, I still responded with a smile. Okay, 5. It was almost lights out when I returned to the dormitory. Phone you from the lower bunk suddenly asked, where have you been? Just wandering around. She was a few years older than me, considered a veteran worker at the factory, and was a rather proud girl who rarely initiated conversations with me. She paused for a few seconds. Why do I always see you running towards the office? I was taken aback. I didn't admit it. You must be mistaken. Better not be. Phone you dropped this sentence. Then drew the bed curtain. After lights out, I kept thinking about her words. In my previous life, I didn't have much interaction with her, so I couldn't figure out what she meant until I fell asleep. The next day, I only worked half a day. Chuda must have tipped off the foreman the moment I asked for leave. He let me go without hesitation. I hadn't brought many clothes when leaving home, so after taking off my work uniform, I just threw on a random cotton dress. As I walked out of the factory area, I spotted Chuda waiting for me at the gate from afar. He was dressed quite stylishly, a green pilot jacket with dark trousers and blonde highlights in his hair, giving off some Hong Kong celebrity vibes. Seeing me, he froze for a moment, looked me up and down, then smirked roguishly. Oh, playing the schoolgirl today, huh? I awkwardly fidgeted with the hem of my skirt. He stubbed out his cigarette. Let's go. I boarded the bus with him. There weren't many people on the bus. He sat one row behind me. I turned my head to look out the window, remaining silent the whole time. About 20 minutes later, Chuda suddenly draped his arm over the backrest of the seat next to me. Little sister. I turned around. He narrowed his eyes, as if returning to how he looked in the hallway last night. Aren't you going to ask where your big brother is taking you? I said with all seriousness. Where to? He moved closer, and I caught a faint whiff of tobacco from him, his low, husky voice now right beside me. Hotel. My mind exploded with a boom. My first thought was that it couldn't be true, but then again, this guy was so unreliable and shady. Could he really? We're here. His eyes were full of mischief. Barely containing his laughter, I abruptly stood up and looked out the window. It was early summer, with a cool breeze rustling through the lush green leaves by the roadside, scattering shimmering fragments of light. Outside wasn't a hotel, but the gate of the city's most prestigious university. 6. I hadn't expected Chuda to bring me to a university. Getting out of the car, he stuffed his hands in his pockets and walked ahead without a care. The security guard at the entrance probably didn't think he looked like a student, stopping only him among the passing crowd. He pulled something out of his pocket. The guard took one look and let him through. He turned back and signaled for me to follow. The security guard didn't stop me. What did you just show him? I asked. He casually tossed it to me. Student ID. I looked at the name and photo on the inner page, shocked. You're a student at this school, little sister. Don't be so naive. He raised an eyebrow. This cost me $10 to get from the overpass peddler. Fine then. Chuda seemed very familiar with this university, leading me through winding corridors into a teaching building. As we were about to enter a classroom, I stopped him. You're going in. He nodded, then smiled when he saw me rooted to the spot. Aren't you curious what a university lecture looks like? Of course I'm curious. Whether in my past life or now, I've never attended university. So I took a deep breath and went in with Chuda. The universities today certainly don't have the modern technology of 20 years later. The wooden desks, lectern, and wall paintings exude a rustic sense of bygone eras, yet to me, It was already spacious and bright enough to hold the fervent hopes and dreams of youth. No one noticed Chude and me. Everyone was busy with their own tasks. This open and inclusive atmosphere was something I'd never experienced in my life before. I remained immersed in a dreamlike surrealism until the bespectacled professor entered the classroom. Only then did I notice that Chude had taken out a book. It was identical to the textbook in front of everyone, one of the books he usually read, so what he's been studying every day is actually university-level coursework, for the entire class, apart from the professor's introduction. I didn't understand a single word. Chude listened with rare seriousness, his expression uncharacteristically solemn. Sunlight streamed through the glass, casting light beside his hand, and in that moment, I suddenly felt as if he was glowing. After class, I followed Chude as we left. I couldn't help but ask, "So, you're here to audit the class?" Chude turned to look at me. "Little sister, don't put it so bluntly." He raised his eyebrows. "I spent quite a bit of money treating them to get familiar with their classmates. Actually, I don't really like him calling me little sister. It's as if once I'm given this title, there's no difference between me and those women around him who get called big sister or little sister." I lowered my head and walked silently in front of him. "What's wrong?" He quickly caught up, his tone still casual. "You don't seem too enthusiastic, girl. My name is Luke." I looked up and stared at him steadily. He froze for a moment, then he smiled. Chude had smiled many times in front of me, but this was the first genuine smile without any mockery or teasing. "My bad." He raised an eyebrow. "So, would you honor me with a meal together?" After a pause, she smiled and said, "Luke, 7, I had dinner with Chude in the city, caught the last bus back to the factory." I knew I was clueless about computers, but still shamelessly borrowed books from Chude. He will later enter the internet industry. If I want to follow him in starting a business, I must increase my own bargaining chips. Chude tossed me a few books with great interest. Although they're introductory readings, they still have some difficulty. "Don't cry if you can't understand them," I pouted. Whether calling me little factory girl or little sister, this person seems to always treat me like a child, but no matter what, we started getting familiar with each other. After that, whenever I wasn't working, I would find a quiet corner to read, and make time to borrow Chude's computer. Although they were just basic introductions, every little progress made me incredibly happy, but gradually, rumors about me and Chude started spreading in the factory. I first heard it in the dormitory. That day I took sick leave for menstrual cramps and was lying in bed. Several roommates came back, thinking no one was in the dorm, and sat on the lower bunk chatting. The conversation covered all aspects of the factory, and finally turned to me. "Has Luke been getting pretty close to Boss Chu lately?" someone asked. "Anyone with eyes can see that." Feng Yu's voice chimed in. I asked her about it before, and she still refused to admit it. "What does she see in Chude?" another person asked. "The factory director doesn't even like him. Once his brother returns, he'll be nothing. With his slacker attitude, what could he possibly achieve in the future?" Feng Yu sneered. "Who knows? Maybe she's unaware of the inside story and just wants to climb the social ladder to become a phoenix." I stared at the ceiling, calmly listening to their judgments about me and Chude. Since I wasn't familiar with Feng Yu and hadn't thought much about it before, I assumed she simply disliked me. Now I suddenly remembered Feng Yu's story from my past life. After Chude's brother Chu Fa returned to the country, Feng Yu quickly hooked up with him and moved out of the dorm. At that time, everyone thought she was going to marry Chu Fa, but to my surprise, even after I left the factory, their relationship remained ambiguous. Later, I heard that Chu Fa married the daughter of a big boss while still maintaining an unclear relationship with Feng Yu. In the end, the boss's daughter found out, forgave the scumbag, but made Feng Yu suffer terribly. Thinking of this, I suddenly understood why Feng Yu harbored such hostility toward me. She probably thought I was the same type of person as her, so she saw me as a rival. Now that she had the chance, she naturally went all out to disparage and slander, but I didn't go down to explain with indignant fervor. "There's one thing Chude said that was right. When no one believes you, anything you say is wrong. I'll be leaving here soon, and my interactions with them will end here." Thinking this way, I turned over. The people on the lower bunk suddenly fell silent. I sneered inwardly and closed my eyes again. 8. At this point, I'm actually grateful for my parents' neglect. This indifference, to some extent, has given me the greatest freedom and control over my life. I regained hope for the future, studying books every day and working hard to save money. I am in no hurry to take revenge on those who have harmed me. My current strength is too weak. I can only endure hardships in silence, but on the path to becoming stronger. There are always those who want to become stumbling blocks. After working overtime today, I used the computer in Chida's office and returned quite late. Just after returning, I heard Feng Yu's loud shouting. Before I could figure out what was happening, she rushed forward, pointing at my nose. Was it you who stole my watch? Before I could react, she started cursing. It must be you, you thieving bitch. I heard from Accountant Lu that you were expelled from school for stealing. Now you've changed locations, and your hands are itching again. I froze for a moment. I never expected my second aunt to have already publicly revealed my past misdeeds. It wasn't me, I said calmly. My expressionless face only made her angrier. She grabbed me by the collar and dragged me outside. Still won't admit it. I'm taking you to see the factory director right now. Let everyone see what kind of person you really are. The loud noise made everyone in the dormitory stick their heads out to look. Without mobile phones yet, such farces were everyone's favorite entertainment. Soon, crowds of men and women gathered outside the dormitory to watch the spectacle. I forcefully shook her off. Feng Yu acted as if deeply humiliated, pointing at my nose while hurling increasingly vulgar insults. The commotion finally drew the attention of the factory management. I saw Chida arrive wearing just a tank top and flip-flops. What's all this racket? He shouted impatiently. When he spotted me in the middle of the crowd, he froze momentarily. What's the matter? He walked over with a grave expression. She has sticky fingers. Stole my. Did I ask you? Chida suddenly roared. Feng Yu was frightened into silence. He turned to me. She lost her watch and accused me of stealing it. I stared at him intently. I just got back to the dorm. I didn't take it. He looked at me and remained silent for a few seconds. In the dim light, I only saw his deep, lake-like eyes. From beginning to end, I wasn't panicked, but in these few seconds of silence, I lost my composure. Would he distrust me like others did? Would he be disappointed in me? Would he? She didn't steal. Chida turned to Feng Yu. At that moment, I heard the heavy sound of a stone hitting the ground. Who knows if she stole it or not? Feng Yu screamed. She leaves early and comes back late every day. Running off right after work but never returning to the dormitory on time. Who's to say she didn't sneak back to steal things and then go out to sell them? My heart sank. Feng Yu played her cards well. The times I left early and returned late were all spent with Chida. If Chida steps forward to testify, it would confirm the rumors about us in the factory. If I don't explain, everyone will inevitably suspect me based on her speculation. So, how much is your watch? Chida suddenly asked. Feng Yu was startled. 500. A 500 yuan watch was indeed an extremely valuable item in this era. When did you lose it? He asked again. Tonight. I still had it this afternoon. He licked his back teeth. I'll take people to turn your dorm upside down right now. If we find your watch and prove she didn't steal it, you'll apologize to her and compensate her 1,000. Everyone present gasped in shock. $1,000 is no small amount for a working-class person. Feng Yu stiffened her neck. Fine, then asked again, what if she stole it? Chida was already leading people toward the dormitory building. Hearing this, he glanced sideways at her and said coldly, there's no such possibility. 9. In the cramped dorm room, roommates took out their respective luggage. The doorway was crowded with curious onlookers. All the cabinets were opened, and under Chida's gloomy expression, no one dared to raise any objections. The people he brought began checking one by one, leaving no corner unchecked. I stood quietly aside, not uttering a single word from start to finish. Experience told me the chances of finding it were slim, and it would most likely end up unresolved. Even if Chida believed me, others would silently assume I was the thief in their hearts. I endured this kind of silent treatment for half a year at school. The clattering of indoor rummaging, the hushed whispers of outdoor conversations. A barrier seems to form between me and the world, blurring both sight and gossip, as if my body were sinking into a quagmire. Darkness, suffocation, helplessness. Found it. A loud cry pierces through the layers of darkness like a beam of light. Everything before my eyes began to clear. I slowly walked over. They excitedly discussed how they found it in the gap behind the cabinet and how they retrieved it. Feng Yu's face turned deathly pale. Chuda's eyes drooped, full of laziness and impatience. All right, we found the thing. You haven't forgotten what you just promised, right? I am sorry. Feng Yu turned to me, her eyes red and on the verge of tears. I don't have that much money right now. Could you give me a few months' grace? By then, no need, I replied indifferently, as if using the last ounce of strength. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, I turned and walked through the throng. Chuda caught up with me in the alley beside the factory building. Stop right there. He suddenly grabbed my arm. I'm fucking helping you. Don't you know how to stand your ground? If I don't teach you a lesson, next time why are you crying? I lowered my head, trying to hold back my tears, but it was completely uncontrollable, falling drop by drop. I wiped my face roughly. I'm sorry. I looked at him. Thank you. He was only wearing a white tank top, revealing his well-defined arms, attractive collarbones, and faintly visible chest muscles. The air seemed to grow even hotter. I hastily averted my gaze. He suddenly leaned in, his lowered voice husky and seductive. Then how will you thank your big brother? I suddenly looked up. The lone streetlight stood far from the factory building, casting dim light in the alley. I couldn't clearly see Daw's expression, only that his eyes shone startlingly bright. His breathing seemed to grow heavier. Has anyone ever told you not to look at a man with that kind of gaze? His voice was hoarse, and my cheeks instantly burned crimson. Just as the atmosphere reached its peak of tension, Chuda took half a step back and tapped my head. I'll put this on your tab for now, we'll settle it later. After saying that, he swaggered off with an arrogant stride. I stood there for a long time before the flush on my face finally faded. When I returned to the dorm, the atmosphere was eerily quiet. Fongyu burst into tears the moment she saw me. Luku, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Please beg Boss Chu for mercy. Ask him not to fire me. I have younger siblings to support. This job is really important to me. I was stunned. Chuda wants to fire you, she nodded tearfully. As I looked at the girl weeping like a rain-soaked pear blossom before me, I suddenly recalled her tragic fate in her past life. If she leaves this place, perhaps she can find a different life. I climbed onto the bed with an expressionless face. That was his decision. I can't influence it. The endless night, the girl's sobs and the moonlight outside the window, like a dream from which one cannot awaken, until sunrise. 10. After Fengyu left, no one dared to bully me anymore. Meanwhile, the rumors about me and Chuda grew even wilder. Phrases like rage for a beauty or when a fair maiden smile became increasingly exaggerated as the rumors spread. The matter blew up so much that it naturally reached my second aunt's ears. But she's a shrewd one. She didn't confront me directly, just kindly relayed it to my mother. I don't know the exact words she used, but from what my mother told me, I could piece together most of it. It was a weekend, and the factory was closed. I had originally planned to study by reading books and discuss some issues with Chuda, but everything was interrupted by my mother's sudden arrival. She stood at the door of my dormitory, wearing a silk dress and a pearl necklace, with a look of disdain on her face. Actually, my family's financial situation isn't poor, but ever since I was little, every time they spent money on me, they'd look gloomy. This displeasure became internalized as guilt in me, always feeling like I owed them. Gradually becoming submissive, yet I never considered that raising children was their responsibility in the first place. Luke, she frowned and called me. Come out with me for a moment. I walked out expressionlessly. She looked me up and down. Did you get the money? We hadn't seen each other for nearly 2 months, with no contact in between, and this was the first thing she said upon meeting. I smiled. What's so funny? She said displeased. Whether I sent it or not, what's it to you? I said calmly. She flared up instantly. I'm your mother, now you remember. Realizing she'd lost her composure, she cleared her throat twice and said coldly, don't think I don't know your situation. Your second aunt told me everything. What? You think you've climbed up in the world and can defy your parents now? The whole factory knows what kind of man he is, yet you're still clinging to him like some treasure. Let me tell you, if you dare do anything to bring shame on our family, I'll break your legs. Her face was radiant with confidence, holding all the cards. Probably thought I'd be as weak and submissive as before, but I just watched her quietly, as if detached from it all. I'm talking to you, hear me, keep your distance from him, don't let me hear any more rumors. Impossible. My face remained expressionless. What did you say? Impossible. The dormitory hallway was very quiet, and even though our argument wasn't loud, it drew scattered onlookers peeking out. She was concerned about saving face. Her face flushed red, and didn't continue the argument. She just left with a wait till your father deals with you, glared at me, and walked away. I spent the entire day thinking about this incident. Will they still come? How will they treat me then? Just drag them away directly. Such things have happened in our factory before. A child ran away, and parents came from their hometown to drag them back. No one will interfere throughout the entire process. Given my current situation, the only way out I can think of is to leave this place with Chuda and start a new life. But when will he leave? In the evening, as usual. I took a book and went to find Chitta. He was coding, and I didn't disturb him, just sat quietly watching. Only when he stopped to rest did I ask, "What are you working on?" "A freelance job," he stretched, "just earning some extra cash." I was surprised he'd started taking side projects so early. "You still have to study. Can you handle it all?" I asked. He leaned back in his chair, raising an eyebrow, doubting me. "No." The atmosphere fell silent for a few seconds. My fingers unconsciously picked at the seam of my pants. I spoke softly, "If one day..." He looked at me. "If one day you have to leave, you must tell me." He froze for a moment. "Where would you go?" "Anywhere." There was a brief daze in his eyes before he smiled. "What, afraid I'll run away?" "You could also understand it this way, I nodded. He raised his hand and flicked my forehead. "Don't worry, Big Brother won't run away." He narrowed his eyes, like a sly old fox full of mischief. "Little Luke, 11. With these words, a weight lifted from my heart. "If my parents insist on dragging me back, I'll make a scene." They care too much about face and would never confront me in front of a crowd, but strangely enough, they didn't show up for quite some time afterward. However, Chin Sharu came. I had just gotten off work from the workshop, covered in grease, when she stood downstairs at our dormitory, wearing a trendy floral dress, looking fresh and neat. Seeing me, she approached with a forced smile. "Xiao Ku, we've finished our college entrance exams." Only when she mentioned it did I suddenly remember. It's already June. I feel like I performed quite well, barring any surprises. I should be able to get into a top university. I looked at her expressionlessly. She didn't even notice my reaction and kept chattering away. "How are you doing now? Factory work must be exhausting, right? Look at all this grease on you." As she spoke, she even took 2 steps back. I sneered inwardly. "If it weren't for you, this spotless soon-to-be college student, how could I have ended up like this?" "Pretty good," I smiled. "I'm teaching myself computer programming." She paused. Then, "What's the use? You're tightening screws at the factory. You don't need that stuff." "Right, who knows, definitely useless." Watching her flustered expression, I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. Just how afraid was she of me surpassing her, that she went to such lengths to stop me from studying? I didn't argue with her, just smiled indifferently. "Since you've finished your exams, I wish you a happy summer vacation. Trust me, you're about to have a summer vacation you'll never forget, I promise." 12. After the college entrance exams ended, another batch of new workers arrived at the factory. Among them was Du Shuichin, my old classmate. She was one of those at school who participated in the Qingsharu plan and falsely accused me of stealing, and it was also her, many years later, who couldn't bear the guilt and chose to tell me the truth. She didn't do well in the college entrance exams and was sent by her parents to work in the factory. We weren't in the same workshop, and in my past life I'd only exchanged a few glances with her. Afraid she'd frame me like she did at school, I kept my distance every time, thus missing the earliest chance to learn the truth. But this time, shortly after her arrival, I appeared before her openly and confidently. Her first reaction was surprise, followed by a mix of fluster. Luku." I squinted with a smile. "What a coincidence." She hurriedly lowered her head. Shouldn't you be preparing for college now?" "I didn't do well on the exam." "Is that so?" I smiled indifferently. "The factory isn't an easy place. After leaving school, this is the only place I can earn some hard-earned money. Others can still take the college entrance exams, but I don't even get a single chance." Her face turned a shade paler. I continued, "I believe in karma, and heaven must surely distinguish between love and hate. If I've done anything wrong, my conscience would be uneasy, haunted by nightmares every night." "Luck," she suddenly interrupted me. After a long pause, not a single word came out. "What's wrong?" "It's nothing." Still not talking. "But it's okay, I can take some measures." In the days that followed, I would appear before Du Shuichin almost every day, doing nothing else, just to gain her trust. The fact that she could tell me the truth in her past life indicates her psychological defenses weren't strong. Qingsharu must have offered some benefit to persuade her to join those villains. The day before college entrance exam results were released, I walked into Du Shuichin's dormitory holding an envelope. She slept in the corner, and no one noticed us while we talked. This time, I got straight to the point. "Du Shuichin, I know all those things you did to me at school were done out of necessity." She froze, visibly flustered. I also know the difficulties you're facing now." I stuffed the envelope into her arms. "This is my salary from the past 2 months. If you want to retake the college entrance exams, you can use it for part of the tuition. I don't blame you for what happened before, I just want to hear you tell me the truth." Her eyes instantly reddened. "I'm sorry. I was being extorted by thugs at the time and gave them all my living expenses." Qing Sharu suggested I accuse you of stealing, saying since everyone already called you a thief, one more accusation wouldn't matter. "I'm sorry, I was foolish and terrified of being beaten by my parents. That's why I did it." My face remained calm, just as expected, the same answer as in my previous life, as if seeking my forgiveness. Du Shuoqin continued, "Actually, I know many people lost their belongings themselves, yet they all claimed you stole them. All these were taught by Qing Sharu. We truly didn't intend to do this at first." "Do you know how I felt at that time?" I asked. Her tear-streaked face suddenly froze. "Du Shuoqin, I don't want to be labeled as a thief for the rest of my life." She stared at me blankly. "They all got into college, only we are the same kind of people." My voice was sincere yet full of temptation. "I need you to help me this once." She paused for a long while. With reddened eyes, she nodded. 13. After the college entrance exam results were released, our former class held a reunion dinner in the city. The reason I knew about it was because in my past life, Qing Sharu deliberately came to show off. Back then, I secretly followed them to the restaurant and watched through the window as they chatted animatedly and toasted each other, everyone brimming with excitement and high spirits. I can't quite recall the complex emotions I felt at the time, only the sharp pain and an almost envious admiration. Now, I stand once again before the entrance of this restaurant. Besides me, there was also Du Shuoqin. Panic flickered in her eyes. "Lu Ku, what if I mess up?" "It's okay," I smiled. "Just say what you know." "Okay." When we entered that private room, they were still chatting and laughing. A few seconds later, dozens of pairs of eyes turned to look in unison. The air suddenly fell silent. Qing Sharu was the first to break the silence. "Xiao Ku, what brings you here?" Many people present had been led by her to falsely accuse me of being a thief. Yet she could still pretend to be warm towards me. Her acting deserves an Oscar statuette. "I heard everyone did well on the exams. Congratulations." Then I shifted the topic. "Of course, before we all go our separate ways, there's something I need to make clear." I looked at Du Shuoqin. She startled. "The truth is, my money wasn't stolen by Lu Ku." Everyone was stunned. "I gave it all to the thugs. And I was afraid of being beaten by my parents, so I said that." These words were all taught to me by Qing Sharu. The crowd erupted in an uproar below. Everyone turned their gaze toward Qing Sharu in unison. Qing Sharu suddenly stood up, the chair screeching loudly. "Du Shuoqin, how dare you slander me? When did I ever teach you to call someone a thief?" "You did teach me. Not only did you make me say it, you also told Sun Fu and Li Jinping to say the same thing." The named individuals grew frantic, following suit and standing up. "We weren't taught that. It was Lu Ku who stole it in the first place." Du Shuoqin protested. "Li Jinping, are you even making sense? Your necklace wasn't even lost at school." "Who says so? You didn't do well on your exams, couldn't get into college, and now you're turning on us with Lu Ku. Who knows if you're just jealous?" I watched the farce unfolding before me. They would never admit it, even with Du Shuoqin's testimony. No one wanted to acknowledge a truth that would tarnish their reputation. I had anticipated this from the very beginning. I took out a stack of letters from my bag and slammed them on the table. The reason I chose to address this matter after the college entrance exams is to avoid affecting your futures. I've painstakingly written multiple complaint letters word by word, meticulously documenting the process of how you all slandered me. Everyone has their dream universities. I assume you wouldn't want these letters sent to the admissions offices, would you? Compared to the later widespread convenience of online reporting, written complaint letters are seen as an extremely serious matter in people's eyes. Li Jinping shrieked. "Lu Ku, you're making baseless accusations. The admissions office would never believe such nonsense." I smiled. "You all have bright futures ahead, but I've reached the end of my rope, as the saying goes. The barefooted fear not the shod. If I file these complaints, it will inevitably affect your university admissions. I can complain until no university dares accept you, and if they do, I'll keep complaining until you're expelled. Go ahead, test whether I dare or not." After all, they were just teenagers of 17 or 18, their faces instantly turned deathly pale. "I'll give you one last chance to tell the truth, and I'll let you go." Those with a guilty conscience find their psychological defenses easily broken. Sun Fu was the first to crack. "It was Qing Sharu who told us to say this. Lu Ku, please don't report me." The crowd erupted in uproar again. Li Jinping slumped into his seat, his face full of dejection. no longer resisting. Yes, it was her. Qing Sharu screamed. What are you all talking about? Why are you pinning the blame on me? Du Shuichin. Stop pretending. Li Jinping also got angry. Qing Sharu, you're just using us as pawns. Could you stop speaking in that innocent tone? It's really disgusting. Dog bites dog. What a good show. But my goal has already been achieved. I walked up to Qing Sharu and pulled out the thickest envelope from the stack. My dear cousin, this is for you. Filled with all my love for you. Qing Sharu flushed red and reached out to snatch it, but I dodged. Lu Ku, just you wait. My parents will never let you get away with this. I tilted my head and smiled. All right. Stepping out of the restaurant, Du Shuichin was hopping and skipping behind me. Lu Ku, when did you write the whistleblower letter? This move really worked. Let me see what you wrote. I handed those letters to her. She took them, opened one with a grin, then froze, then opened several more in succession. Why are they all blank sheets? She exclaimed in astonishment. They are indeed blank. Then, she suddenly paused. You were just trying to scare them. I chuckled. Which school's admissions office has so much free time to read so-called tip-off letters? Only those with a guilty conscience would believe in such things. So you're just going to ignore them? Yeah, it's not worth wasting energy on them. I just want to wash off the dirt that's been thrown at me. After returning in the evening, I went to the office to return the book to Chitta. He stared at me. In a good mood today. Yeah, I didn't deny it. Cleared my name. He raised an eyebrow, waiting for me to continue. I didn't intend to hide it from him, so I briefly explained the whole process. Unexpectedly, he chuckled softly. What are you laughing at? I asked, puzzled. He raised an eyebrow at me and let out a playful whistle. As expected of my little Luke, I froze in shock, my cheeks burning red, yet he acted as if nothing had happened, casually turning away to code. All night long, Chu Da's words echoed in my dreams. My dear little Luke, 12. But what's meant to come will come. On the second day of work, second aunt rushed into the workshop, came up to me, and grabbed my arm. Perhaps afraid of making a scene, she suppressed her anger. Come with me. I frowned and shook off her hand. I'm still busy. Say what you need to hear. She finally couldn't hold back anymore. Luke, how can someone so young be so cruel? What did Sharu do to deserve those letters you wrote? I played dumb. What letters? Everyone here knows about it. Don't play dumb with me. Her sudden shout drew everyone's attention, the classmates present. They certainly know, I sneered. They know Qing Sharu conspired with others to frame me as a thief, forcing me to drop out before college entrance exams and end up tightening screws in a factory. Why do you conveniently omit all this? Seeing me expose Qing Sharu's misdeeds publicly, she panicked. I'll have your parents drag you home immediately. You disgrace. With that, she turned and stormed off, her high heels nearly drilling holes in the floor. The parents arrived quickly. After mother left last time, she didn't call father to discipline me together. I thought they had suddenly become kind-hearted, until I saw the cast on father's leg and him limping with crutches. Then I understood. So something had happened. Heaven has eyes indeed. Life in the factory was too monotonous. So the workers slowed their tasks and craned their necks to watch this farce. My father struggled to suppress his anger. Look at the mess you've made. Quit now and get the hell home. I remained expressionless, not uttering a word. My mother added timely, your father's leg is injured, and there's no one at home to take care of him. Seeing that tough tactics didn't work, they're resorting to emotional blackmail now. I still uttered the same 3 words. Impossible. The mother grabbed the furious father. Do you want to spend your whole life stuck in this factory? Not exactly. I even smiled. I'll build my own career. What? I smiled without speaking. You were earning steady money here. I thought you were at least somewhat useful. Now you want to run away. If you leave, I'll consider you no daughter of mine. Wasn't it always like this? Father finally exploded. You're leaving today whether you want to or not. If you refuse, we'll tie you up and drag you away. He lunged forward with his cane, raising his hand to strike. I didn't dodge. Instinctively closing my eyes, the expected pain never came. I opened my eyes to see a familiar figure standing before me, gripping my father's wrist with one hand. Chudo was wearing a short-sleeved shirt that revealed his arm tattoos, a cigarette dangling from his mouth, looking even more roguish than usual. His tone carried a threat. We don't tolerate trouble in this factory. The father's expression turned stern as he withdrew his arm. I'm here to take my daughter home. Chuda's gaze swept past me and returned to my father. He clicked his tongue. This complicates matters. My father paused. She just signed her full-time contract the day before yesterday. If you take her now, the penalty fee. will you pay it for her? These words do carry some intimidation, but my father merely paused for a moment before still reaching out to pull me. She hasn't been here long enough to get a permanent position. I'm taking my daughter home, this has nothing to do with you. Chuda stepped forward, positioning himself squarely in front of me. He spat out the cigarette in his mouth and ground it under his toe. Go ahead and try, he said casually. If you can take her even half a step outside this factory, I'll stop being a Chew. The sheer intensity of the situation genuinely frightened them. Amidst the tense silence, second aunt arrived upon hearing the news. Seeing Chuda's dark expression, she didn't even bother having my parents discipline me, but instead coaxed and persuaded them until they finally left. Chuda turned around. You, wait for me a moment, I need to say a few words to them. When I came back, Chuda lit another cigarette without looking up at me. Aren't you curious about what I said? I asked. What? I said, I'll be leaving here soon. He suddenly looked up. Where to? I named a city in the south, staring intently at him. With you. He froze for a moment, then suddenly smiled. Sometimes I think you're really the little worm in my belly. I remembered what he just said. When did I sign the regularization contract? Even when questioned by me, he remained unflustered. He knocked on his chest with a fist and smiled. Signed right here, with a seal stamped too. I chuckled too. How long's the contract for? A lifetime. That near confession left my mind completely blank. Chuda left as if nothing had happened. It took me 2 days to pack my luggage, which wasn't much. And I didn't have much money either. Finally, on a sultry afternoon, the scene that made me drop everything and rush into the factory to fight for my future reappeared. Chuda walked into the workshop with his hands in his pockets, a cigarette dangling from his mouth. Leaning against the desk, he halted everyone's work and asked with a roguish tone, I'm starting a business, who's willing to join me? Just like in the previous life, the workshop fell completely silent. Amid everyone's astonishment, I raised my hand. Through the crowd, Chuda looked at me with a smile and slightly lifted his chin. Then come with me, Luku, 13. Before leaving, Du Shuichin found me. Luku, are you going south with Chuda? I nodded. Have you thought it through, going with him now? What's the difference between that and eloping? I looked at her seriously. We're going to start a business. That might just be his excuse. He's so unreliable. Anyway, everyone's saying you've lost your mind. I smiled. This is the life I've chosen. He's reliable. What others say doesn't concern me. It was drizzling on the day we parted. I was the only one from the whole factory who went with him, and we agreed to meet at our usual spot. In the misty drizzle, that familiar slender figure stood by the red brick wall, holding an umbrella. Hearing the movement, they lifted the umbrella and looked over. I abruptly stopped in my tracks. His yellow-streaked hair had turned black, paired with a cool-style outfit that made his facial features appear more angular. What are you staring at? He raised an eyebrow. Let's go. By the time I boarded the southbound train, the sky had already darkened. Through the window, the night view of the entire city can be seen. Though far less prosperous than later years, it still shimmered with lights. Chuda sat beside and suddenly asked, Are you afraid? Amid the roaring sound, the train entered the tunnel. In the pitch-black window, only my young, naive yet determined face could be clearly seen. I turned to look at him. From the moment we met, I've never seen unease in this man. Yet now he gazes up at the ceiling as if somewhat lost. I raised my hand and slowly covered the back of his. His body visibly stiffened for a moment. I'm not afraid, I said. He looked down at me. His gaze was overwhelmingly tender. 14. Starting a business wasn't as hard as I'd imagined. Chuda didn't come into entrepreneurship empty-handed on a mere whim. Before this, he had already found like-minded partners. The team included computer science graduates, professionals who quit their jobs to focus on IT, and people willing to contribute funds or labor despite lacking technical knowledge. I'm curious how Chuda assembled such a team. Only later did I learn that their connection was built through shared aspirations, relying on the still slow internet and countless phone calls. So it was essentially a meetup of online friends in this era. But not being hard doesn't mean the entrepreneurial journey was smooth sailing. They rented an office and registered an internet technology company. The company's main business is in the telecommunications field, expanding paging systems for wireless networks. Passionate young people gathered together, full of energy every day, envisioning a bright future for the company. But me from the future couldn't help but feel worried. Although I haven't studied Chuda's entrepreneurial history in detail, what eventually made him a household name and landed him on Forbes wasn't telecommunications, but e-commerce. So I'm not entirely sure whether this is a butterfly effect after rebirth, or just one of his failed experiences. It's comforting that Chuda understands not to put all eggs in one basket. Besides the internet company, he also started offline businesses. He rented a shop in an electronics mall to sell electronic products. I originally studied computer science diligently hoping to join his internet company, never expecting to end up being assigned to work at the counter selling products. And he left me with the remark, "Your amateurish skills need at least 2 more years of practice." Knowing my abilities were insufficient, I didn't resist and just worked at the store with 2 other employees. This entrepreneurial life seemed to suddenly settle into quiet routine, but I didn't slack off. Whenever I had free time, I would seize the opportunity to study or go to the company to observe, from summer to winter. I've already been here for half a year. When I first arrived, I formally wrote a letter home to let them know I was still alive. I didn't expect them to reply, and indeed, they never wrote back to me. Ironically, I received a letter from Ching Sharu. The entire letter was filled with accusations and insults, not forgetting to inform me that she had been admitted to a prestigious normal university, while defining my venture to the south as delusional. I found it amusing and kept the letter, thinking that one day when I return home in glory, I must read this letter aloud in public. The shop business keeps me busy every day with inventory management, customer communication, and after-sales service. At night, I stay in a rented civilian house just next door. During the company's startup phase, Chuda rarely came by, making this shop feel more like a place he arranged to accommodate us employees. It wasn't until later when everything was on track that I could see him more frequently. It was already winter by then. With 10 months of summer each year, winter is probably the most refreshing season in this southern city. The shops were getting busier with business. After another busy day of settling accounts and closing up, I was the last one to leave. Walking through the dimly lit streets, still preoccupied with work, I heard the distant sound of a man and woman laughing from a far corner, probably a couple on a date here. Just as I was about to hurry away, the man's figure suddenly seemed familiar. I stopped in my tracks and took another look. It's Chuda. They were too far away. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but it was clear there was an intimate atmosphere between them, chatting happily. An indescribable emotion welled up in my heart. I suddenly felt an inexplicable anger. I've put my heart and soul into his small business, yet here he is enjoying romantic dalliances with other women, having the time of his life. But what can I do? He's the boss. I regained my composure. I only emerged from the shadows at the street corner after that woman had left. Seeing me, Chuda wasn't surprised either. Raising an eyebrow, "Yo, off work," I responded indifferently with a and was about to walk past him to go back. He caught up. "What's wrong?" I didn't turn back. "Nothing much." He clicked his tongue. "Something on your mind?" No. He didn't press further, but walked with me for a while. The dimly lit long street was quiet, with only the sound of each other's footsteps and shallow breathing audible. In the end, I still couldn't hold back. "That person just now was..." Before I could finish asking, Chuda smiled. After half a year of entrepreneurship, he was no longer the frivolous person he used to be, whether in dress or demeanor. The mature and refined gentleman he would become was already taking shape. But at this moment, he reverted to his playful and teasing demeanor. "Are you jealous?" My breath hitched. Hastily denied. "No." He let out a thoughtful "oh, then it must be jealousy." He suddenly stopped in his tracks, and I turned to look. In the moment I looked up, cool fingertips touched before me, giving a gentle pinch. He bent down, his breath close enough to feel. "Don't worry, she's just a client." I instinctively stepped back, yet he leaned in closer. "Right now, Big Brother only has you in his heart." My mind exploded with a boom. Are you confessing to me?" "What else?" I kept stepping back, but he suddenly wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling my entire body close to his. Our breathing grew heavier. "Luke," his lowered voice was hoarse. How about making you the boss lady?" I buried my head in his chest, my nose filled with the familiar scent of him mixed with a faint tobacco aroma. My mind went blank, followed by flashes of all the moments we've shared together. A surge of emotion could no longer be suppressed. "Okay," I responded softly. "Luke." He called me again. "Have you passed your 18th birthday?" I looked up, somewhat puzzled. What?" The kiss fell urgently and fiercely, swallowing the remaining words. My legs went weak as I clung to him, my palm resting on the tattoo that once frightened me. Now it seemed like a little beast, utterly adorable. His strong arms nearly lifted me as he pressed close, his breath scorching by my ear. call me brother." My voice broke. "Be brother." He lifted me up forcefully and kissed me fiercely. "Big brother will take you home." 15. That spring festival was probably the best New Year I've ever had in my life. Whether it was Chu Da's shops or the companies he partnered with, everything was moving in a positive direction. During the spring festival gathering, everyone joyfully envisioned the beauty of the coming year, shared hopes for the future, clinked glasses, and reveled in the lively atmosphere. And amidst the fireworks that year, I held Chu Da's hand, our fingers intertwined. I knew the future wouldn't be smooth sailing, but no matter what happens, I would never leave. The turning point of the story always comes so unexpectedly. After the New Year's resumption, Chu Da's company encountered frequent problems. Issues in funding, technology, and competition were tormenting everyone's nerves. Finally, after months of losses, some chose to leave. Like a breach in a 100-mile dike, the flood poured out, and the team began to collapse. I watched Chida standing on the balcony smoking cigarette after cigarette through the night, powerless to help. At that moment, I wished more than anything that I had the ability to help him, but we couldn't abandon the shop. It was our last resort. The declaration of failure came on a day as ordinary as any other. It was raining heavily that day. Chida smoked 5 whole packs of cigarettes. I've seen his arrogance, his gentle courtesy, but for the first time, I saw this man in a state of despondent despair. But there was nothing I could do, can only quietly stay by his side. Outside the window, the rain grew heavier, and amidst the clamor of the downpour, he suddenly spoke, asking softly, "Do you regret it?" I turned my head to look at him, almost thinking I had misheard. At that moment, time seemed to suddenly rewind. A year ago at the train station drizzling with rain, he sat beside me and softly asked, "Are you afraid?" The raindrops from back then now drift into the southern wind. I raised my hand again, gently covering the back of his, speaking with firm resolve, word by deliberate word, "No regrets." 16. We've been through some tough times. All the funds were used to keep the shop running. To save money, we had to let employees go, and Chida and I worked day and night. He was discouraged, but he didn't give up. I always encouraged him that once we saved enough money, we could start another business. Accidents can happen when you least expect them. I got into a car accident while making a delivery. Chida was trembling all over when he brought me to the hospital. We had no money at all, but somehow Chida managed to pay the hospital bill. I asked, "Who did you borrow it from?" He casually replied, "A friend." Only later did I find out he went to a phone booth to ask his family for money. By then, his eldest brother Chu Fa had returned to take over the factory, and somehow Phone Yu managed to reconcile with Chu Fa again. The person who answered the phone was Phone Yu, taking advantage of her current status as Chu Da's sister-in-law in name. She berated him fiercely to vent her resentment over being fired before relaying the matter to Chu Fa. Chu Da endured it all like that, and only then managed to borrow the money. A proud man like him never mentioned this to me directly. Only late at night, thinking I was asleep in the hospital bed, did he speak, half to himself, half as a promise to me, "I'll never let you suffer like this again." The night was deep, with only the clear sound of a heartbeat reminding me this wasn't a dream. Fortunately, my injuries weren't severe. After a full-body examination, only minor fractures were found, and I was discharged within days. Chida took excellent care of me, and no longer let me worry about the shop affairs. The spring and summer temperatures in coastal cities are very high, and every time I see his hard-working figure rushing about, I can't help but feel heartache. In the midnight dreams, I lean on his shoulder and murmur, "Everything will get better." Every time at this moment, he would almost devoutly place a kiss on the top of my head and say gently, "Thank you." He rarely says thanks, but I understand the meaning behind these two words. The turning point came in late autumn. We saved some money, expanded the shop, and hired staff. One evening, on the way back with Chida, he suddenly said, "I want to do online commerce." I was taken aback for a moment before understanding what he meant. As expected, he still didn't give up on what he had learned. "Then do it," I said. That night under a sky full of stars, Chida turned his head to look at me, his eyes shining brilliantly. "What if we fail again? Then we'll start over from the beginning." He froze for a moment, then burst into laughter. At that moment, it was as if he had returned to the wild and untamed Chuda of old. "That's how you should laugh," I said. "That's the Chuda I know." He ruffled my hair, said okay in a gentle voice. 17. The first year of the 21st century was probably also the most unforgettable year after my rebirth. Chida expanded to over a dozen stores and simultaneously launched an online mall. On my 20th birthday, Chitta took me to the seaside. At the junction of day and night, the afterglow of sunset reflected on the avenue, the sea breeze brushed our faces, and the horizon was filled with twilight clouds of deep purple and light red. The last trace of daylight faded away. Suddenly, dazzling fireworks rose in the distance. Under the sky full of sparkling lights, Chitta suddenly knelt on one knee, holding up a diamond ring, and proposed to me by the sea. I think I'll remember that scene forever. After that day, we boarded the train back home. After 2 years away, everything still looked familiar, though not exactly wealthy. It could be called a triumphant homecoming. I didn't bring Chitta and return to that home alone. I deliberately chose the evening and waited at the entrance of the building for my younger brother Lu Xiaokong, who was returning late. I called his name. After 2 years apart, he didn't recognize me at first. Who are you? After a pause, he spoke with a face full of disdain. Lu Ku, didn't you elope with someone? What? Got abandoned, spoiled by his parents since childhood. He lacked empathy and had a sharp tongue. I didn't take it to heart, just smiled and said, yes, I eloped with someone. So now I want to discuss something with you. What? I lowered my head and took out a wad of cash from my wallet. Here, take this, help me steal the household register. His eyes lit up, not caring at all why I needed the register, eagerly agreeing and snatching the money to stuff into his pocket. I'll come find you again in a couple of days. Once the item is ready, I'll give you another sum of money. It's a deal. I turned and walked away. The corners of my mouth couldn't help but curl upwards. Although we really needed the household register to get the marriage certificate, the money I gave him had long been marked with its price. The reason Lu Xiaokong was so happy is because he urgently needed money at that moment. While still in middle school, he followed some delinquent students and joined a gang with underworld connections. They ran an underground gambling den. Exposed to this environment daily, Lu Xiaokong learned to gamble at a young age and lost substantial amounts of money. Initially he stole money from home, but when the debts became unmanageable and gang members came collecting, his parents finally discovered the situation. For their only son, they exhausted their family fortune, barely managing to repay the debts. Yet Lu Xiaokong showed no remorse and went back to gambling. As his parents grew older, they couldn't afford medical treatment when ill, let alone give him money. He followed the same path as every gambler, stealing, robbing, and committing every evil deed imaginable. The latter half of his life was almost entirely spent in prison. Now when I give him money, it's just to make this process go a little faster. 18. 2 days later, I waited for Lu Xiaokong at the usual spot, household register. He handed it to me. Where's the rest of the money? I expressionlessly took out my wallet, only for him to snatch it away. The rest is all mine. He swept away all the money like a robber. I smiled, picked up the wallet he had thrown on the ground, and watched his arrogant figure walk away. I wonder how much money he'll lose this time. After getting the household register, Chuda and I went to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Neither of us informed our parents, just like star-crossed lovers in ancient times who pledged their lives to love without hesitation. In my previous life, I never got married. All my money was taken by my parents to pay off Lu Xiaokong's debts. To make ends meet, I had to work desperately hard, as if to make up for my regrets. In this second life, fate allowed me to meet my other half much earlier. The group photo against the bright red background is the one where I'm smiling the sweetest. Chuda held me and said, I'll come back by year-end and give you a grand wedding. I nodded and replied, okay. Having things to attend to, Chuda left early. I didn't go with him, staying a few more days. After all, there were still some things I hadn't finished. When I met Lu Xiaokong again, the first thing he asked for was money. I gave it again. He counted the money with a smile, completely unconcerned about where my money came from, nor did he see anything wrong with taking someone else's money. In his eyes, he was upholding our family's principle that women earn money for men to spend, as if this were the natural order of things. For the last time, I gave him a large sum of money. It was an amount he and his parents could never have imagined in their lifetime. Then, I bought a train ticket for that same day and returned to the south. Not long after returning, I received a phone call from my mother. I had no accidents. Before I left, I deliberately had someone pass my contact information to her. She sobbed over the phone, Xiaoku, do you have any money left? Your brother lost a lot gambling and was taken by debt collectors. They said they'd break his legs. Hearing her voice again after 2 years, I only felt estranged. Xiao, who are you? I'm your mother. She sobbed uncontrollably. Your father took out all our money but it still wasn't enough. Before Shiwakon passed, he told me to contact you, saying you have money now. That's right, I do have money now. I kept smiling. But what does that have to do with you? I'm your mother, he was your own brother. Oh, I replied indifferently. So you still remember, but sorry, he should bear the consequences of his own actions. It has nothing to do with me. Let me give you some advice. Sell everything at home, especially that computer, and the money might just be enough. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Have a nice life. After hanging up, I immediately unplugged the phone line. The current situation is just a replay of the past life. It's just that my interference made it happen a few years earlier. Their precious son is their own problem to solve. I won't lift a finger to help them anymore. Whether they have to sell everything they own or exhaust their wealth, that's their life now. 19. At the end of the year, Chuda prepared a seaside wedding as promised. There weren't many guests, but each brought sincere blessings. It was a wedding without parents, yet filled with rebellious romance, amidst a sky full of confetti and balloons. Chuda devoutly planted a kiss. I swear I will make you happy forever. 20. At 25, I returned to my hometown once again. By this time, Chuda had secured funding, riding the tailwind of the times, and their online store was thriving. Simultaneously, he donated many things to his hometown school, becoming a local celebrity. So after I returned, the director of the Education Bureau warmly welcomed me with his team. In the evening, the director wanted to host a dinner, and I didn't decline. I specifically requested to invite my alma mater's principal and a newly hired teacher at the school, Ching Sharu. I added with a smile, she's my cousin. The director probably thought I wanted to reminisce, so when inviting them, he didn't mention my arrival, planning to give them a surprise. The result was indeed a surprise. After years apart, the principal seemed to have forgotten me, but Ching Sharu froze in place the moment she stepped through the door. The director asked with a chuckle, were you too shocked to see your cousin? Only then did Ching Sharu flusteredly take her seat, her face deathly pale. At the dinner table, I smiled and clinked glasses with other guests, sharing stories of my years in the South and recounting our entrepreneurial journey over the years, perhaps thinking I'd let bygones be bygones. After several rounds of drinks, Ching Sharu gradually relaxed and occasionally chimed in with a few words. But whether addressing the bureau chief or school principal, there was always that same nauseating obsequiousness. I took a small sip and set down my wine glass. Suddenly, I remembered an amusing incident from my school days. The director became intrigued. Do tell. I smiled and said, in my senior year of high school, I was forced to drop out. As soon as the words were spoken, the room fell completely silent. The principal probably thought I was some successful alumnus at first. But when he realized I didn't even graduate high school, his expression instantly changed. The director likely didn't expect me to say such an inopportune remark either, but had no choice but to grit his teeth and continue asking, then, what happened? I kept smiling. This teacher Ching, who happens to be my cousin, is quite clever. She and other classmates concluded I was the thief and brought me before our dear principal here. Everyone's expressions changed. Awkward, curious, schadenfreude. I continued, the principal was even smarter. He could label me a thief without investigation and threatened to drag me to the police station. Luckily, teacher Ching pleaded for me, and the principal compromised, saying he'd drop the matter if I withdrew from school. After saying this, no one responded. Looking at the varied expressions before me, I smiled. Just an old story, don't dwell on it, let's keep eating. A few people chimed in, and the dinner proceeded. After the meal, the director pulled me aside. I wasn't aware of this matter before. Rest assured, I'll thoroughly investigate these two individuals. If similar incidents occur, they'll face severe consequences. Forget about any future promotions. I smiled. You're overstating it. That wasn't my intention. After some small talk, I left. I don't know how the director specifically handled this matter. In short, Ching Sharu quickly lost her job. Not long after, the principal in her alma mater's official profile was also replaced. The world is just this realistic. If you want to retaliate against those who've oppressed you with privilege, you can only do so by possessing even greater privilege. Before leaving, I went back to take one last look at home. I noticed the security door had been replaced, with a strange family now living inside. Perhaps they sold the house to repay debts, or maybe to escape debt collectors. In any case, they vanished. Suddenly I felt an unexpected lightness in my heart. The past torments, the exploitation of previous lives, the despairing dark memories, the bewildering uncertain future, At this moment, I was finally liberated. 21. The night of returning to the south, when Chitta returned from his business trip, dressed in a suit, he was no longer the scruffy young man who used to smoke in the factory. After our brief separation, he didn't even take off his coat before scooping me up in his arms. "Did you miss me?" He buried his face in my neck. "Yeah, what did you do during this trip back?" he asked, thinking of the principal and Ching Sharu at that dinner gathering. I used a more easily understandable explanation, met some old acquaintances. Suddenly, Chuda raised his head. "A man." I was taken aback, then laughed, teasing him on purpose. "What's wrong, President Chu?" Scared, he raised an eyebrow, turned and pinned me on the sofa, loosening his tie, provoking me. I was still smiling. How would I dare? The next second, his kisses rained down overwhelmingly. In the entanglement, he gently bit my lip, then let me test just how much you dare. That night, I had a dream. In my dreams, I continue to waste away in my past life, living day by day, seeing no future in this miserable and hopeless existence. My parents were drained dry by Lu Shuakong, yet they still ordered me, their daughter, around. I toiled without complaint for decades, only to be called an ungrateful wretch in the end. I finally learned the truth about being falsely accused and expelled from Du Shuachin, while the one who framed me, Qing Sharu, had long become a special grade teacher at the high school, being hailed as a model example year after year. Finally, on a snowy night, as I was packing up my stall and heading home, I collapsed into the snow. There wasn't a single part of my body that didn't hurt. They had beaten me many times before this. 2. I woke up at this moment. The morning light filters through the window, the bedroom is tranquil, and beside me lies Chitta, breathing steadily. For a moment, I feel dazed before snuggling into his embrace. Moments later, I tiptoe quietly into the bathroom. When I emerge, I'm holding a pregnancy test with 2 lines, feeling somewhat bewildered. It must have happened before I left. I returned to bed, lying beside Chitta, hesitating for a long time before whispering, "Chitta," he responded sleepily. You're going to be a dad, huh? What?" He abruptly sat up, his still groggy expression brimming with ecstasy. "Really, yeah." He picked me up and spun me around the bedroom. I held onto his shoulders, weeping with joy. The sun finally rose at this moment. Story 2. On my 65th birthday, I died of overwork. My husband, Gu Chongqing, was busy remarrying his first love and couldn't come to see me off for the last time. My son was eager to please his biological mother and blamed me for picking him up in the snow all those years ago. The grand wedding made everyone envy the twilight love of the 2 old professors, and they thought the original wife was vulgar. In the end, no one was willing to pay for my burial. Only a thin and tall man silently took out all his savings to buy me the best gravestone. He was still wearing the red string bracelet I gave him all those years ago. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the age of 17, this time. Between romantic charm and honest simplicity, I chose the latter. 1. Lying in the hospital bed, I could clearly feel that my life was coming to an end. The doctor said that my illness was caused by excessive fatigue. Over the past few decades, I had devoted myself wholeheartedly to my family, and it had worn out my body, but I didn't regret it. Although I, Zhao Tsuei, came from a rural area and didn't have much education or academic qualifications. Compared with women in the city who had read a lot of books, I was also rarely capable. In that era, I saved money bit by farming, slaughtering pigs, carrying cement, and picking up garbage. I lived frugally to support my husband, Gu Chongqing, in his studies, and I also managed to make connections everywhere to arrange a job for him. I helped him rise from a down-and-out educated youth in the countryside who had lost both parents and had nothing to a decent and well-known old professor at a prestigious university now. Gu Chongqing was not only humble but also very affectionate towards his wife. Everyone envied me for my good fortune and my sharp eye for choosing a man, even the son I picked up in the snow. Now I had raised him from infancy to the point where he had started a family and a career. He wasn't particularly outstanding, but he was well known for his filial piety and thoughtfulness. Looking back, the hardships I had endured in my life seemed worthwhile, and I hadn't lived in vain. I stubbornly held on to my last breath, just wanting to wait for my husband, Gu Chongqing, and my son, Gu Nianyu, to see them one last time and have them send me off. I didn't know why they hadn't come yet. Maybe there was a traffic jam on the way. I had just bought the car that Nianyu had been longing for. He was probably driving very carefully, so he was a bit late, or maybe Chongqing had encountered an urgent matter at work. In recent years, He had become very busy and was always on business trips abroad. He was already so old, and the school didn't seem to care about him. Anyway, they must have been held up by something. In the past, I would have waited patiently without making a sound, but now I couldn't hold on for much longer. I struggled to look at the nurse beside me. She comforted me softly. "Grandma Zhao, I'll help you urge them again." She first called Chongqing. After a long busy tone, there was no answer. She called again, and still, no one answered. Then she called Nianyu's phone. In less than 2 seconds, it was hung up. I was so anxious that I coughed and couldn't catch my breath. The little nurse was also anxious. What on earth are they busy with? One after another. It's already this time. No. I have to call again. This time, fortunately, the call got through. She let out a sigh of relief and turned on the speakerphone. "Sir, may I ask when you and your father will arrive? Your mother, Grandma Zhao. She may not be able to hold on for much longer." I looked at the other end of the phone expectantly, but the next second, the person on the other side spoke ruthlessly and impatiently. "Why hasn't she died yet? Also, she's not my mother. How can a rural bumpkin like her be worthy? My real mother is Xia Wanyu, the famous Professor Xia who returned from studying abroad. I'm currently attending the century wedding of my real mother and my real father. Don't bother us anymore. Can you afford to delay the auspicious time? As for that old hag who has shamelessly occupied my mother's position for decades, she should be sensible and close her eyes and die quickly." After saying that, he hung up coldly without a trace of nostalgia. The little nurse was shocked and stood there speechless. My head was buzzing. It was like countless thunderbolts were crashing down one after another. Was this still my son? My son, Gu Nianyu, was well known for his filial piety. How could he say such things? Also, wasn't he an orphan I picked up in the snow? How could he be the son of Xia Wanyu? How could he be the son of my husband, Gu Chongqing, and Xia Wanyu? Weren't they just simple senior and junior fellow students? What century wedding? My husband was going to marry someone else on the day I was about to die. I simply couldn't understand and couldn't believe it. Anger and doubt filled my chest. My chest rose and fell rapidly, my whole body kept shaking, and my muscles spasmed uncontrollably. I opened my eyes wide. Just like that, amidst the little nurse's exclamation, my breath suddenly stopped, and I died with my eyes open, too. Perhaps it was because of my deep resentment. After I died, my soul floated in the air. And I saw many scenes that subverted my perception. The road that I had walked countless times when picking up garbage during my lifetime. At this moment, a red carpet extended, and there was a hubbub of gongs and drums. There were lion dancers leading the way in front, and a 10-mile red dowry at the end. The onlookers gathered in groups, and my husband, the man I had loved all my life, Gu Chongqing, was wearing a red robe and riding a horse. His smile was as shy as when he was a teenager. He greeted the passers-by with a bow and recited a poem in high spirits. "For 50 years, we have been separated like a pair of swallows. It's hard to write the love song in the brocade letter. Today, I marry my beloved, and I'm happy to tell the whole world." Behind him was an exquisite and eye-catching 8-person sedan chair. Xia Wanyu sat in the sedan chair, wearing a phoenix crown and a wedding dress, with a beautiful face. The magnificent procession attracted everyone's attention. What a grand Chinese-style century wedding. It was so imposing that it was blinding. When I married him, he said that the conditions were temporarily difficult, and he didn't have the ability to give me much. After he achieved something in his studies, he would make up for me with a grand wedding. I believed him and didn't ask for any betrothal gifts. I wholeheartedly supported his studies with my life. Later, when there were better conditions, he said that as a professor and at his age, having a wedding would not only make people laugh but also affect his work. I believed him again and comforted myself that life was for myself, and what was the use of so much grandeur? What's more, now that the family was full of children and grandchildren, it was better to save some money. Even after retirement, I still went out to pick up garbage with my retirement salary, just to save some money for them. But now, he didn't have so many excuses anymore. And he no longer said that spending money was wasteful. Looking at this scene, the passers-by all sighed. I really envy the beautiful love of the older generation, Gu Chongqing and Xia Wanyu. These names are just like the heroines in novels. I said why Zhao Tsuetsue was not worthy of Professor Gu. It turns out that she was a shameless mistress who took the position and separated them alive. The name Zhao Tsuetsue is really extremely rustic. She has done all kinds of bad things in her life. Since she couldn't have children herself, she stole Ms. Xia's child to raise. I was so angry that I cursed. but no one paid attention to me. Later, they changed to cars. My son, Gu Nianyu, whom I regarded as my own, attentively helped Xia Wanyu by the hand and helped her into the BMW car that I had bought with my money. Come on, Mom, take it slow. Xia Wanyu didn't move and frowned slightly. I don't want to ride in a car that a country bumpkin has ridden in, Gu Nianyu immediately added. Mom, don't worry, this car is clean, that old hag hasn't touched it. Only then did Xia Wanyu's frown relax, and she got into the car. I suddenly realized, no wonder he never wanted to take me for a drive in the car after buying it and always used the excuse that his driving skills were not good and he was concerned about my safety to prevaricate me. It turned out that my son thought I was dirty. The motorcade drove all the way until it stopped in front of a brand new Chinese-style single-family villa. Gu Chongqing held Xia Wanyu's hand and got out of the car. Madam, as you said, I didn't let her know about this place, and I didn't even let her come in half a step. It turned out that he had secretly bought a wedding house without telling me. My husband also thought I was dirty. Among the full house of guests, they raised their glasses and clinked them. At this time, the hospital called again to inform the family that I had died and asked them to come and sign for the burial. My son, Gu Nianyu, said, still help collect her body. I'm not blaming her for privately picking me up in the snow and making me separate from my real mother for so many years. That's already very kind of me. My husband, Gu Chongqing, said, this is not my obligation. I have never regarded her as my wife. In my heart, there is only Wanyu. Such a vulgar person is not worthy of me collecting her body. He turned around and patted Xia Wanyu's hand, praising her. You're so smart. You made me lie to her that she couldn't have children. Otherwise, how could she take care of our son wholeheartedly like a nanny? Xia Wanyu raised the corners of her lips, looking proud. I laughed until tears came out. Xia Wanyu, for so many years, because of Gu Chongqing, I had always taken care of you as if you were my own sister, worried that you would have difficulties alone abroad. I not only acquiesced in Gu Chongqing sending you money but also subsidized you from time to time myself. I gave my heart and soul to each of you. And how did you treat me? You made a fool of me. The family that I had worked hard for all my life turned out to be false. My husband belonged to someone else. And so did my child. My whole life was a huge joke. No one remembered that today was my birthday, even no one was willing to pity me and collect my body. My memorial day was their wedding day. How ironic. 3. In the hospital, the little nurse was in a state of anxiety. She called all the numbers in my phone book but couldn't find anyone to come and sign. At this time, she suddenly received a strange call. She quickly answered it, treating it as a last resort. I looked at the number and felt that it seemed somewhat familiar. The call was connected. The person on the other end was silent for a moment, looking a bit disbelieving. Zuizue, you're finally willing to answer my call. I didn't mean to disturb you. It's just that I heard that Gu Chongqing is getting married today. Have you already separated, or did he do something to let you down? Don't be afraid. If he dares to let you down, I will definitely teach him a good lesson. Don't think too much. This is what I should do. After all, I'm your brother. He said the last two words very softly, as if he was saying it to himself. I finally recognized who it was. Zhao Chuanchuan, the elder brother who had been fostered in my family since he was 10 years old and grew up with me. He was smart, honest, diligent in work, and sensible, and he had always taken good care of me. My parents often joked that we should become a couple, but after meeting Gu Chongqing, I was attracted by his cultural temperament. Compared with Zhao Chuanchuan's honest and dull personality, I preferred the educated youth from the city who could talk about romantic things, so I only regarded Zhao Chuanchuan as my brother and spent all my time around Gu Chongqing. After getting married, Gu Chongqing was afraid of being gossiped about and didn't let me have much contact with Zhao Chuanchuan, saying that after all, he wasn't my real brother, so over the years, we had never been in touch. But what did he mean by saying that I refused to answer his calls? Zhao Chuanchuan talked to himself for a long time, as if he had gotten used to it. By the way, do you still have money to use? Don't be stingy with yourself. Today is your birthday, and I've sent you another sum of money. It's still the same bank card number as before. Don't worry about me either. I'm a big man, and I have nowhere to spend my salary. I remember that you like flowery clothes the most. Buy yourself a couple more to wear. You look good in anything. My nose twitched, and big tears fell. Over the years, only he had still been as good to me as ever. No wonder the number seemed familiar. I had seen it a few times on Gu Chongqing's phone. the bank card number must have been given to him by Gu Changxing pretending to be me, and it was actually Gu Changxing's own. Over the years, he had been hiding from me and spending the money that Zhao Chuanchuan sent. As for clothes, he had never bought me a single piece. I hadn't bought myself new clothes for many years either. My husband and son both said that I was old, my figure was out of shape, and it didn't matter what I wore. The little nurse went from being confused at first to feeling sorry. Finally, she couldn't help but interrupt with a choked voice, "Excuse me, Grandma Zhao passed away just 2 hours ago. Would you please come and sign so that she can be buried?" The other end fell silent immediately. Then came the sound of something heavy falling to the ground. When he spoke again, the man was incoherent. Half an hour later, a simple old man with a walking stick appeared at the door of the ward. He had a tough appearance, was thin and tall, only his right foot was a bit lame, and he walked in a hurry, almost falling. Looking at the person covered with a white cloth on the bed, he suddenly didn't dare to move forward. The hand holding the walking stick shook unsteadily and couldn't stop trembling. He stretched out his hand and carefully lifted a corner of the white cloth. His eyes immediately turned dead. He calmly closed my eyes. Then he lost his strength and knelt on the ground. He murmured to himself, "I thought that if I didn't bother you, you would be very happy. I was wrong. I was really wrong. If I hadn't let go back then, would it not have been like this?" He covered his chest and actually vomited out a mouthful of blood. It was as dazzling as the worn-out red string bracelet on his wrist. After a long time, he took out the banknotes wrapped in a cloth from his pocket, one by one, as small as 1 yuan, together with the bankbook. He handed them to the little nurse. "Please help me buy the best gravestone and bury her. Thank you." Only then did I realize the secret that he had never told in his life. Regret, resentment, anger, sadness, and powerlessness, all kinds of emotions intertwined. If I could live my life again, I would definitely not live like this. Suddenly, it went dark in front of my eyes, and I completely lost consciousness. 4. Tsue, are you going to give all of your and Brother Chuan's work points today to educated youth Gu and educated youth Xia? The scorching sun shone through the gaps in the straw hat, burning hot and blinding, yet also incredibly real. I had actually been reborn and returned to the year when I was 17. At that time, Gu Changxing and Xia Wanyu had been in the countryside for a year and a half. Unlike other educated youths, they rarely did farm work in the fields. If they didn't work, they wouldn't get work points, and without work points, they naturally couldn't get rations. At first, they relied on the savings and rural subsidy they brought from the city. Later, they met me. With a single sentence from Gu Changxing saying that he wasn't in good health, I took on most of the farm work for him and Xia Wanyu and managed to get my work points transferred to them through some backdoor channels. He complained that the food in the collective canteen wasn't nutritious enough and that he had to fight for it, so I prepared good meals for them every day and invited them to my home to eat. As time went by, they took my efforts for granted and even gradually became more and more demanding. Just like now, the two of them wanted to leave after only working in the fields for 5 minutes. It was clear that they didn't want to exert any effort at all and were counting on me to do all the work, and for the work I couldn't finish, Zhao Chuanchuan would naturally help me. In other words, Zhao Chuanchuan and I were helping them earn work points together. Not far away, a slender and fair boy and girl walked over together. At 18, Gu Changxing had a delicate and handsome face, exuding an arrogant scholarly air. He handed me a lotus leaf that was almost wilted from the sun and spoke in a refined manner. "Tsue, you are the big dewdrop beneath the lotus leaf, and I am the smaller dewdrop on the lotus leaf. I think this lotus leaf suits you very well, so I'm giving it to you." Seeing that I didn't respond, he thought I was once again charmed by his literary romance. A look of complacency, as if everything was under his control, flashed across his eyes. "Wanyu and I don't feel well today, so we'll go back first. Please be kind enough to allocate a few more work points to us." Then he added, "Oh, by the way, we want to eat wild pheasant and wild apples tonight to replenish Wanyu's nutrition. She was exhausted yesterday and needs to recuperate. Remember to tell Brother Chuan to prepare them." The girl beside him was wearing a lotus leaf hat, holding a lotus flower in her hand, revealing a delicate face and a slender figure. "Thank you, Tsue. You know, I've never done any work before. Since coming to the countryside, I haven't been in good health. I can't compare to you who grew up in the countryside and are so strong. I really envy you." Certain that I would agree, the two of them turned around and left after giving their instructions. I looked at their intimate backs. With an ambiguous and unclear atmosphere lingering around them, I almost gritted my teeth in anger. How could I not have seen such an obvious relationship in my previous life? I clenched my fists and maintained my rationality. Stop. The two of them turned around, not understanding why. I looked at the tattered things in my hands, smiled, and deliberately showed them around to the surroundings, raising my voice. You people from the city really have smart minds. Exchanging a few work points for a broken leaf, you're even better at doing business than capitalists. Those who know say that you people always uphold the principle that the gift is trifling but the feeling is profound. Those who don't know might think that you're just thick-skinned and love to take advantage of others through speculation. As soon as I finished speaking, several sneers emerged from the crowd working around. Gu Chongqing's face changed slightly, looking a bit embarrassed. Xia Wanyu was also very surprised. Suizue, what do you mean? This lotus leaf was carefully picked by Brother Chongqing for a long time and given to you specially. Oh, so it seems that you have the leisure to go boating on the river and pick flowers, but you don't have the strength to work. On the surface, you are educated youths responding to the call to go to the countryside for re-education, but actually, your thinking is backward. And you're here on vacation and to retire, right? As soon as these words were spoken, they immediately resonated with the crowd and aroused dissatisfaction, especially the other educated youths who had come to the countryside but were working honestly. They had long been frowned upon these two taking shortcuts. I haven't seen educated youth Gu and educated youth Xia in the field several times since they came to the countryside. That's right, we've all gotten tanned, but they're still fair and tender. They don't eat for free in the city anymore. They've changed to relying on women to eat for free in the countryside. While we were working hard, they actually went to a small pond for a tryst. In the past, when I heard such words, I would definitely stand up and refute to defend them immediately. I couldn't stand others saying anything bad about Gu Chongqing, but now, I remained silent, showing my agreement, seeing that the discussions were getting louder and louder. Both Gu Chongqing and Xia Wanyu's faces turned 2 shades paler. They were both afraid and angry and wanted to defend themselves. Suddenly, I held my forehead and swayed, covering my chest. I had a pained expression. With a whoosh, a mouthful of blood spat out from my mouth. The people around were so frightened that they all exclaimed. Gu Chongqing and Xia Wanyu were even more terrified and took several steps back, as I was tottering. A pair of big hands suddenly and steadily caught me around the waist. The next second, my whole body was lifted off the ground and held in a strong embrace. The boy's cold and hard jawline was tense, and his sideburns were sweaty from the sun due to his work, because he had rushed over from another field in big strides. His breathing was rapid. Suizue, where do you feel uncomfortable? Zhao Chuanchuan was 17 years old this year, the same age as me. He was tall, straight, and strong, with wheat-colored skin and handsome and resolute features, but he was always taciturn, used to burying himself in work, and looked honest and dull. I looked at him, took a deep breath, and adjusted my complex emotions. I should deal with the current matter first, so I secretly pinched his elbow. This was the secret signal I used to play tricks when I was a child, pretending to be a ghost. Sure enough, he stared at me steadily for 2 seconds, his tense shoulders relaxed imperceptibly. But his hands didn't move at all, letting him hold me. I said weakly, I've been strong since I was a child and never had any illnesses, but since half a year ago, my body has gradually become unable to take it. Zhao Chuanchuan said that I've done too much work that isn't mine and overdrawn my body. Zhao Chuanchuan looked serious. Yes, Suizue needs to rest. Zhao Chuanchuan had a great talent for medicine. There wasn't a single herb in the back mountain that he didn't recognize. He was the well-known little barefoot doctor in Kaitan village. Once he said this, its credibility was certain. Everyone started talking at once. What a pity. I watched Suizue grow up. She was so healthy. Now she's actually coughed up blood from overwork. While some people always say that they're not in good health, but actually they're lively and jumping around. Maybe they're just faking it. I can't stand it anymore. Just because they're from the city, they think they're great and bully our rural girls like this. Everyone knows that Suizue is the most enviable girl in our village. Her father is the brigade secretary, her mother is an old worker in the textile factory, and her betrothed can slaughter pigs, hunt, and treat diseases. The whole family dotes on her. Before the educated youths came to the countryside, I never saw Suizue do any work. Some people should have some sense of shame. From now on, do your own work. You've enjoyed enough blessings. Gu Chongqing and Xia Wanyu were so ashamed that their faces turned red. Zuizue, it's not that your aunt is talking about you, you have to keep your eyes open when choosing a man, you mustn't want this kind of pretty boy, especially one with an unclear burden, the old or crafty, she saw it at a glance. I nodded, cough, cough, auntie is right, I mustn't, I was too stupid before, so from today on, you two educated youths, please earn your own work points. What happened today was just the first step in my break up with them. If I didn't make a preemptive move like this, with their style, they would definitely turn things around and play the victim to everyone, saying that I hated them because of unrequited love. At that time, others would only think it was my problem. Now it's different. After today, everyone will only remember how excessive they were. Suizue dash, Suizue dash. I didn't pay any more attention to the two people behind me who were almost drowned in saliva. Zhao Chuanchuan picked me up and left. We walked through the deserted bamboo forest until we got home. Immediately, I returned to normal and stopped pretending to be sick. I couldn't wait to get down from his arms. Just as I was about to complain to him, I saw the young man staring blankly at his empty arms, a bit at a loss. His eyelashes slowly drooped, hiding the imperceptible desolation. He said with difficulty, I offended you just now. I will explain it clearly to them. That's right, 17-year-old Zhao Zuizue, in order to pursue her beloved, tried her best to draw a clear line from her childhood sweetheart, for fear of being misunderstood in the slightest, not to mention being carried in his arms like a princess in public. She would even avoid suspicion if they talked a few more words. But the one standing here now was Zhao Zuizue, who had returned to the age of 17, I said righteously. Explain what? Are you afraid of being misunderstood by someone about our relationship? As expected, a grown-up son has his own mind. The young man suddenly looked up, with an anxious expression. I'm not, Zuizue, I really don't. Not what? The young man wanted to say something but stopped, and his face was already blushing. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Even if Zhao Chuanchuan was slow-witted, he also realized that I was deliberately teasing him. His eyes became helpless and complex. Where was it broken just now? Ah, I reacted for a moment. You mean this? My gums were bleeding. Open your mouth and let me see. When we were young, Zhao Chuanchuan was my little dentist. I subconsciously complied, looking into his pitch-black pupils. I felt a bit uncomfortable and closed my mouth again. Be good, let me see if it's inflamed. If it develops into a toothworm, it will be bad. My gums tightened. That couldn't be. In my previous life, my teeth were very healthy. It wasn't until after I got married to Gu Chongqing that I got cavities. At that time, life was hard and tight. I wanted something sweet in my mouth. When I went to the supply and marketing cooperative, I couldn't bear to buy any snacks except the cheapest brown sugar. A pack could be eaten as a snack bit by bit for 2 or 3 months, over time. My teeth were also damaged. When the toothache flared up, I would roll on the ground in pain. When the pain subsided, I would stuff sugar into my mouth again. Such a cycle continued, and finally, when I was in my 60s, I didn't have many good teeth left. While I was reminiscing, rough fingers had already pressed on the corner of my mouth and pried it open with a gentle but firm force. His burning gaze observed inch by inch, patiently and meticulously. It took so long that my mouth watered, and I subconsciously closed it, but unexpectedly, my soft tongue collided with his fingertips and quickly passed by. Both of us were stunned. His fingers froze in mid-air for a moment and then retracted unnaturally. It's all okay, it's just a bit inflamed. Then he turned around, picked up the bamboo clips by the door, and walked outside. What are you still going to the back mountain for? They're in very good health. There's no need to replenish them. The young man didn't look back, and the tips of his ears were red. For you, 6, there were a lot of wild game in the back mountain of Kaitan village, but the forest was thick and steep, winding, and there were many snakes and insects, so the risk factor was also very high. Ordinary people only dared to pick wild vegetables and mushrooms on the periphery. Only those who were bold and capable had the opportunity to catch the good things inside. So if people wanted to eat meat, they usually had to buy it with money and meat tickets. In the past, when each household could generally only eat meat once a month, my family was in a relatively good condition and could eat meat once a week. Later, Gu Chongqing and Xia Wanyu came. The two of them had to eat fine grains and noodles every meal and required a balance of meat and vegetables. Although they looked thin, they ate a lot. To satisfy them, the food in my family was consumed at an extremely fast rate. When the meat tickets were not enough, We relied on Zhao Chuanchuan to go to the back mountain to hunt wild game. My parents loved me, and Zhao Chuanchuan complied with everything I asked. Even in this era, they didn't say anything about supporting two people for nothing, they just kept working hard. So to be precise, our family of 4 was supporting Gu Chongqing and Xia Wanyu, but not anymore. At this time, Zhao Chuanchuan was clearing the way in front with a sickle, and I was following closely behind him. He was more silent than usual. With a bit of helplessness and rebuke, he thought it was dangerous and always didn't let me follow him into the mountain, but just now, he couldn't persuade me when I suddenly became rebellious. I couldn't remember exactly when Zhao Chuanchuan's leg was broken in my previous life. I only knew that on a rainy night, I had a high fever. He went up the mountain to look for herbs and disappeared for most of the night. When people found him again, he was covered in blood. In this life, no matter what, I couldn't let him have an accident. After Zhao Chuanchuan set the trap, all that was left to do was wait. He silently handed me some mulberries, a whole branch that he had broken off from somewhere. Each one was big and plump. I was stunned for a moment and took them. It was as if I had suddenly returned to the time before I met Gu Chongqing. At that time, I loved to stick to Zhao Chuanchuan. I would follow him wherever he went except when he went up the mountain. Afraid that I would be bored, he would always settle me down first, either by giving me something to eat or something to play with. As I ate the fruits in my hand, it was as if the estrangement between us in the past year and a half had never existed. It seemed that as long as I turned back, he was always there. The thin barrier between us melted silently as we got closer to each other. There was a rustling sound from the trap in the distance. The eyes of the young man beside me immediately became as sharp as a falcon's. The muscles in his tense arms were like a cheetah full of strength. In an instant, he rushed out. When he came back, there was a fat, dead pheasant in the bamboo clips in his hand. On the way down the mountain, Zhao Chuanchuan picked a lot of fresh mushrooms. The mountain road was dangerous and slippery after the rain. If Zhao Chuanchuan hadn't been quick-eyed and grabbed my arm in time, I would have almost stepped on air and rolled down the slope. He sighed and finally said in a low voice, "Zue, it's dangerous in the mountains. Don't follow me in next time," I retorted without thinking. "But it's even more dangerous for you to be alone. I want to be with you." He raised his eyelashes, and my face was reflected in his pitch-black eyes. After a moment, he returned to silence. But his steps became more stable and slower. It was 5 or 6 o'clock in the summer evening, and it wasn't time to finish work yet. Most people were still working in the fields. When we were almost home, the door of the neighboring house suddenly opened from the inside. A delicate and clever girl in a blue shirt walked out, with 2 shiny black braids. Her eyelids were one single fold and one double fold, making her look full of spirit. It was Lian. We used to be good sisters for more than 10 years, but our relationship broke down after Gu Chongqing and Xia Wanyu appeared. She couldn't stand me flattering Xia Wanyu and was also dissatisfied with my crush on Gu Chongqing. She had said many times, hating that I couldn't become a useful person, that I must have been bewitched and advised me to stay away from these two people, but I didn't listen. And later she gradually ignored me, until the night before my wedding in my previous life. She unexpectedly came to see me and gave me a huge sum of 5 yuan that she had saved for a long time as a dowry gift. On the one hand, she scolded me with red eyes for not knowing people well and not cherishing the person in front of me. On the other hand, she cried and hoped that I would be happy in the future. Only then did I know in that life that she liked Zhao Chuanchuan. In retrospect, in fact, her liking had never been concealed. It was just that my attention was all on Gu Chongqing at that time, so I didn't notice. And now, this was the worst time in our relationship. We had been in a cold war for 3 months. She didn't give me even a sidelong glance. She walked straight up to Zhao Chuanchuan and handed him 2 white steamed buns wrapped in oiled paper, which were still steaming. "Brother Xiaochuan, you've worked hard today. My family just steamed pickled bean paste and meat buns. Eat 2 to replenish your body." In this era, white flour was a fine grain, and meat was even more precious. Zhao Chuanchuan took 2 steps back and said faintly, "No, thank you." "Oh, I forgot. Brother Xiaochuan, you don't like beans." As if it were expected, Lian didn't react much to being rejected. Her gaze only lingered on me for a moment, as if she said casually, "I heard that someone coughed up blood from overwork in the fields today. No wonder. She's reluctant to eat her own family's food and gives it all to those 2 ungrateful wretches. She's even more generous than the Buddha who cut his own flesh to feed the eagle. It's your lucky day today. These 2 meat buns are a bargain for you." After saying that, Without another word, she stuffed the oil paper package into my hand, then turned around and slammed the door shut. Zhao Chuanchuan beside me held his breath, waiting for my reaction. After all, in my previous life, except in front of those two people, I had a short temper. On ordinary days, I would explode at the slightest provocation. How could I tolerate such sarcasm? However, I naturally picked up the bun and took a bite. I commented as I walked, "It's a fool who doesn't take advantage of a good deal, not to mention, it really smells good." 17-year-old Zhao Tsuetsue didn't understand what duplicity was, but the current Zhao Tsuetsue did. Chen Yinglian knew very well that Zhao Chuanchuan didn't like beans. Chen Yinglian also knew very well that Zhao Tsuetsue loved to eat beans. It was obvious who the buns were specially meant to replenish the body for. 7. In the past, to please Gu Chongqing and Xia Wanyu, I always cooked light meals, but in fact, my whole family loved spicy food. The excellent wild pheasant was just right for making stir-fried chicken with fresh peppers. I cooked, and Zhao Chuanchuan stoked the fire. I chopped the chicken into small pieces with a few swift cuts of the knife and divided it into 2 halves. I set one half aside for later use. I washed the other half, soaked it in salt water for 20 minutes to get rid of the fishy smell, and then drained it. I heated oil in a pot. When the oil was hot, I added chili peppers, scallions, ginger, and garlic and stir-fried them until fragrant. Then I poured in the chicken pieces and stir-fried them thoroughly. The aroma of the rapeseed oil and various spices was fully released under high heat and blended with the chicken. The rich smell of meat filled the air. Zhao Chuanchuan looked up. I met his surprised pupils and casually averted my gaze. After being a nanny for someone for decades, how could my cooking skills not improve by leaps and bounds? Some things couldn't be explained and could only be muddled through. I avoided his inquiring gaze, started another stove, and used the remaining half of the chicken to simmer a clear soup. At the same time, I added some mushrooms to enhance the freshness. Seeing this, Zhao Chuanchuan's hand holding the firewood paused slightly. He slowly retracted his gaze, lowered his head, and his back bent slightly. I was focused on cooking and didn't notice. I continued to stir-fry a dish of stir-fried greens with garlic and spicy tofu. The strong aroma gradually wafted in the yard, making people's appetites soar. My parents came back just at this time. My father had been helping the brigade drive a tractor during the day, and my mother had just gotten off work at the factory. My father sniffed and sighed. "I'm in for a treat again." My mother snorted. "What are you so happy about? Was it specially cooked for you? You can only dip a little in the soup at most. If you take 2 more bites, your dear daughter will be worried that those 2 will starve and lose weight." I came out with another pot of stewed chicken soup just in time to hear this and shrank my head guiltily. It was impossible for my mother not to have any complaints about feeding 2 extra mouths for nothing. She didn't beat me to death purely because I was her own child. My mother pointed at the soup I was holding and said angrily, "Look, look, she's even made special food for those 2. Zhao Chuanchuan's face turned a little paler. I was just about to refute. Speak of the devil. Gu Chongqing and Xia Wanyu, who had never worked in the fields as they did today, appeared at the gate of the small courtyard, sweating profusely from exhaustion. Hearing this, their wobbly steps became eager. Gu Chongqing even surprisingly called out to Xia Wanyu to come and help me carry the pot. "Wanyu, Tsuetsue has stewed chicken soup for us to drink." "Drink your ass. Do you 2 even deserve it?" Without any outsiders around, I didn't bother to pretend anymore. I dodged, rolled my eyes, and walked past them towards the neighbor's house, leaving the 2 of them standing there in a daze. As for the other 3 people, a flash of surprise crossed Zhao Chuanchuan's eyes, and then he tightly suppressed the corners of his mouth that wanted to turn up. My parents had a look of disbelief on their faces. I stood at the door of Chen Yinglian's house. There were sounds of an argument coming from inside. "You little brat. Did you give the 2 missing meat buns to the neighbor next door?" "No. I ate them." "Humph, still being stubborn. Your younger brother saw it." "Do you think our family is rich? How can you be so pretentious? I've never seen them thinking of you when they have big fish and meat every day, yet you still have the nerve to act generous and meddle in other people's business." "Mom, stop talking. They're having chicken again today. If they could even give you a mouthful of soup, I'd call you Mom." The next second, I took a deep breath and shouted, "Yinglian, open the door. I'm here to bring you chicken soup." There was an eerie silence inside the door. When the door opened, Entley looked unnatural. With a stiff smile, Chen Yinglian stood at the door and looked at me. We looked at each other, and finally, we both burst out laughing. She knew me. and I also knew her preferences very well. It was still not too late, as long as one lowered their head, there was no grudge between sisters. When I got home, those two were still standing at the gate of the yard as a punishment. The three people in my family naturally waited for me to start the meal. Seeing that I sat down on my own without inviting them as attentively as before, Gu Chongqing and Xia Wanyu's expressions were a bit unpleasant. Gu Chongqing glanced at the dining table and frowned. Although the food you cooked today, Suetsue, doesn't suit our taste, we can still make do with it. Well, you can cook 4 eggs for us and serve them with 2 bowls of white rice. He was still acting so self-righteous and superior. When are you going to pay the food expenses? You've been eating here for over a year and still want to keep freeloading. I remember someone once said that they would never take even the slightest advantage. It turns out it was all a lie. My goodness, I never thought that educated youth Gu would be such a person. I deliberately spoke in a strange tone. Gu Chongqing in his youth was the most high-minded and face-saving period of his life and couldn't stand the slightest provocation. He had always said that he paid me the food expenses, whether others believed it or not. At least he could save face for himself. He was taken aback and immediately became argumentative. When did I say I wouldn't pay? It's just that you never mentioned it, and I didn't know how much to pay. Xia Wanyu beside him tugged at the corner of his clothes. I smiled. I'll charge you 70 cents a day for the two of you. For the past year or so, let's make it an even 300 yuan. Pay up. In 1976, the average monthly income in rural areas was only a few yuan, and it was all calculated according to work points. Only those formal workers in the county town could receive a salary and tickets every month. My mother, as an old worker, only earned 15 yuan a month now, not to mention Gu Chongqing and Xia Wanyu, who were almost unemployed vagrants. When they heard this figure, they blurted out in shock, "How much? You eat better than in a state-run restaurant every day. I'm actually charging you less. Now you think it's too expensive and can't afford it. Where were you in the morning?" Gu Chongqing's face turned red with anger. He wanted to argue, but the food was indeed beyond reproach and was well known throughout Kaitan village. In the end, he had to press his lips together and look at me disappointedly. He used his usual trump card, threatening me by depriving me of my special treatment. "Suetsue, I thought you were different from those rural girls. You're actually so mercenary, vulgar, and petty." Xia Wanyu didn't say anything, but her eyes expressed the same meaning. In my previous life, this trick always worked. Every time, I would fawn over them like a dog and coax them. I was so angry that I didn't want to see these two people anymore. I put down my chopsticks and looked around. A mother knows her daughter best. My mother casually picked up a broom from beside her and handed it to me. Without saying a word, I picked it up and started to drive him away. "I'm telling you, I'm not only mercenary, but I'm also a shrew." Gu Chongqing protected Xia Wanyu in his arms while dodging away in a sorry state. He still didn't forget to be stubborn and threaten me. "Zhao Tsuetsue, you're really something. I won't look at you differently even if you beg me next time. We don't care about your food." As soon as he finished speaking, a clean chicken leg bone suddenly fell from the sky and happened to hit Gu Chongqing on the forehead, accompanied by the voice from the neighbor's house. "What a shameless person. You're just a despicable wretch who only deserves to suck on chicken bones." After a chaotic scene of them losing their composure, the small courtyard became completely quiet. My father and mother looked at each other and said with relief, "Our daughter has finally grown up." That gum inflammation was really ingenious. A mouthful of blood also spat out the water in her head. "Suetsue's mom, it's a great day today. Let's have a couple of small glasses of wine." My father took out the old wine that was only brought out to entertain guests during the Chinese New Year. After pouring 2 glasses, he didn't stop but poured another glass and placed it in front of Zhao Chuanchuan. He smiled. Before Zhao Chuanchuan could react, my mother became anxious first. "You old fool. What are you giving the child wine for?" My father stretched out his hand to stop her and said meaningfully, "Our Xiaochuan also wants to drink today." "Right, Xiaochuan." The tips of Zhao Chuanchuan's ears suddenly turned red, but he nodded firmly. The moment he picked up the wine glass, our eyes met. His dark eyes were astonishingly bright, making my eyes wander. My mother looked at one and then the other and nodded repeatedly. "Yes, it's hot. Drinking it will help you sleep better at night." 8. Perhaps the impression I left on them by throwing a tantrum was too deep, or maybe they were afraid that I would ask them for that huge sum of food expenses. After that day, they didn't dare to show up in front of me again, of course. Part of the reason was that I hardly went out after I didn't have to work in the fields. After being exposed to the sun for over a year, my originally fair and tender skin had become a bit rough, dry, and yellow. I was so anxious that I applied cucumbers as a facial mask every day, which girl didn't love beauty. Fortunately, I had a complexion that was easy to turn white, so I managed to remedy it to some extent. Of course, it would be even better if I had some vanishing cream. Shanghai brand vanishing cream was a luxury item in this era. A small box cost a month's salary of an ordinary worker. Not only was it incredibly expensive, but it also required industrial coupons. Even if you had the money and the coupons, you weren't necessarily able to buy it, because it was a well-known hard-to-get item. So for now, I could only think about it. I couldn't fall asleep at night. So I simply put on my clothes and quietly went out. Little did I know that as soon as I left, the young man in the opposite room who was just about to go to sleep also opened his eyes. The educated youth dormitory was located at the head of the village, separated from the village by a reed marsh. The reeds were thick and lush, and it was said to be a good place for a tryst. In the dead of night, it was pitch black all around, and only the faint stars and moon above were still shining. In this environment, the sounds of a man and a woman being affectionate in the reed marsh were particularly clear. I recognized who it was and smiled. I had just come here on a whim, but I didn't expect to really catch them. Brother Chongqing, the food in the collective canteen is so awful. You can feel that I've lost weight recently. The dormitory is cramped and small, and it leaks. Some people even snore, and I can't sleep well. Hearing Xiao Wanyu's long string of grievances, Gu Chongqing sighed pitifully. Xiaoyu has suffered. Let me think of a way. Didn't you say before that there was an empty room in Zhao Tsue's house? Brother Chongqing, go and coax her again. She's always listened to you the most. Humph, coax her. Just wait. With the way she's infatuated with me, within 2 days, she'll come begging us to move in like a lapdog. Okay, I believe in you, Brother Chongqing. Then, the sounds of pleasure became more intense. My hands itched again. Just as I was about to turn around to find some tools, I saw a thick and long rotten tree root being handed to me. Zhao Chuan, who shouldn't have been there, touched the tip of his nose at this moment. He showed a smile as if he had done a good deed without leaving a name. I raised my eyebrows slightly and decisively took it. I bent down slightly, found the right moment, and suddenly struck with a stick. I knocked down a patch of reeds, completely covering their bodies and blocking their sight. Screams and cries of pain rang out. Who is it? Then they remembered that they were having an affair, so they gritted their teeth and didn't dare to make a sound. I took the opportunity to wave the stick again and hit them randomly, so fast that there were afterimages. All the grievances and indignation from my previous life welled up in my heart, making my eyes red. I simply threw away the stick and used my hands and feet. I slapped and kicked them. Regardless of whether they were male or female, I grabbed their hair and slapped their faces. However, Xiao Wanyu was protected by Gu Chongqing, so she was beaten less for a while. I squinted my eyes and kicked her buttocks a few times. Finally, I stopped, panting. The two of them, with bruised faces, found a chance and immediately covered their faces and ran deep into the reed marsh, not daring to look back at all. Not until they disappeared completely did I turn around and ask, Zhao Xiaochuan, why are you here too? Accidentally, I just happened to be here. What a coincidence. I lifted my foot and was about to go back, but when I exerted force, my whole body went limp, especially my legs, and I could hardly stand up. I had used too much force just now, and my adrenaline was exhausted. I used to be like this when I got into fights as a child. I looked at Zhao Chuan faintly. He tentatively said, how about I carry you? I smiled and said, well, I'd better accept your kind offer. The young man's back was broad and strong. I could feel his tense muscles even through his clothes. I lay on his back and admired the night sky above. Suddenly, a shooting star streaked across the distance. I subconsciously closed my eyes and made a wish. Taking this opportunity, I began to seriously think about how I should live my life after being reborn. I wanted to go to university. I wanted to make a lot of money. I hoped that all the people I cared about could live a good life. Finally, I cursed that Gu Chongqing and Xiao Wanyu would have a bad life in this lifetime, at least not as good as mine. My thoughts wandered, and drowsiness gradually came over me. In a trance, I heard the young man suddenly ask, Tsue, what wish did you just make? Thinking of my rough face, I blurted out, to have a box of vanishing cream. If you tell your true wish, it won't come true. After a long time, so long that I fell asleep, the young man softly said, I see, Tsue, in the moonlight. The young man's every step was slow and steady, as if he was carrying the whole world on his back. 9. Suetsue, do you know that those two ungrateful wretches fell down a few days ago, early in the morning, just after I finished my meal? Cheninglian, after cutting pigweed, came to my house excitedly to share the gossip with me. They fell really hard, they didn't go to work for several days. I heard from the people in the educated youth dormitory that they were howling in pain at night. Ha ha ha. I coughed and held back my laughter. It seems they didn't fall hard enough. Why didn't they fall to their deaths? Cheninglian gave me a thumbs up in admiration, staring at me. She suddenly said, speaking of which, what kind of taste does Gu Chongqing have? I think you're much prettier than Xia Wanyu. She's only better in being fair and thin. Her facial features can't compare to yours at all. Is it my illusion? Suetsue, you become much fairer than before. As she spoke, she reached out and touched my face. And your skin has become tenderer too. How did you do it? Teach me quickly. I shook the small box in my hand uncertainly. Maybe it's because of this cream I applied. Vanishing cream. Suetsue, have you made it big? I didn't buy it. What? Thinking of a possibility, Cheninglian's expression became a bit stiff. It can't be that Brother Xiaochuan bought it, right? Seeing me hesitate, the corners of her lips drooped slightly. She took a deep breath and looked up at me. Suetsue, tell me the truth. Do you still only regard him as your brother now? The words were on the tip of my tongue, and the face of the young man flashed through my mind. After that night, Zhao Chuanchuan went to work in the fields before dawn in the morning. He hurriedly finished his meal at noon and then went to help the village slaughter pigs. In the afternoon, he walked dozens of miles to the city to treat patients for others and didn't come back until it was completely dark, except for not going into the mountains. He did all the jobs that could make money. His sudden enthusiasm scared the whole family, thinking that he had been stimulated by something outside. After all, our family had always followed the principle that as long as there was food to eat and people lived comfortably, there was no need for great ambitions. Until one day when I woke up and pushed open the door of my room, I found a box of vanishing cream wrapped in a cloth handkerchief lying quietly on the ground. Only then did I remember the casual words I had said. Later, my mother even teased my father at the dining table. In terms of spoiling our daughter, we'll soon have to take a back seat. Just a brother. I looked at her with a guilty look in my eyes. Sorry, Inglian, I don't understand. I'm going to feed the pigs. The moment I opened my mouth, the girl's eyes turned red. She quickly interrupted me and turned to run outside. She almost bumped into Zhao Chuanchuan, who was walking in. She paused for a moment and then ran even faster with her head down. Zhao Chuanchuan came in at just the right time. I wasn't sure how much he had heard, and my face felt a bit hot. There was no sign of anything unusual in the young man's expression. Suetsue, are you still going to the county town today? Let's go. I turned around and took a newly made set of men's clothes beside the sewing machine. Put this on. It took him a while to react. Did you make this? Suetsue, I knew what he was shocked about. In this era, everyone could do a bit of needlework, but very few people could make clothes. The former were ordinary people, while the latter were called tailors. The threshold for being a tailor was very high. It required not only owning one of the 3 revolutions and 1 ring, a sewing machine, but also having superb craftsmanship accumulated over decades. In short, tailors were very popular and respected. Coincidentally, my family had an old sewing machine, which was my mother's betrothal gift. In my previous life, in order to support Gu Chongqing's studies, I learned everything that could make money, besides slaughtering pigs and carrying cement. I also worked as an apprentice for an old tailor, opened my own tailor shop, and finally worked in a garment factory until I retired. If it weren't for my old age later, with poor eyesight and trembling hands that couldn't thread a needle, I wouldn't have had to resort to picking up trash. Making 2 sets of clothes is an easy task for me now. As for the changes in me, they will get used to them in the future. I replied to Zhao Chuanchuan without batting an eyelid. Yeah, I made it. I only discovered my talent when I touched the sewing machine a few days ago. I was clearly being perfunctory, and seeing this, Zhao Chuanchuan didn't ask any more questions. While he was changing clothes, I also put on my new clothes. The ordinary fabric, after being cut and designed, not only fit extremely well but also looked very innovative, making the best use of my advantages and avoiding my disadvantages. My figure is plump and full, and I'm not suitable for wearing straight tube clothes. Slightly taking in the edges not only no longer makes me look fat but also makes me appear tall and slender. The young man looked broad-shouldered and narrow-waisted in his new clothes, and he was particularly elegant and tall. It was really eye-catching. While I was looking at him, he was also looking at me. It wasn't until both of us blushed that we looked away one after another and went out with a somewhat clumsy gait. It's 15 li from Kaitan village to the county town. Most people wait for the tractor at the entrance of the village to go to the city on errands and take a ride along the way, but the time for going back and forth like that is not convenient, so Zhao Chuanchuan borrowed a bicycle. The road was smooth, and the sun wasn't too hot. It was just a little past 9 o'clock when we arrived in the city. Zhao Chuanchuan came to the city this time to review a patient. But he said he was going door to door to sell herbal medicines. I knew that he had many prescriptions for treating stubborn and complicated diseases, which he had since my father brought him to Kaitan village 7 years ago. Even though my father was very tight-lipped, I knew that his background was definitely not as simple as what my father said, but everyone has their own secrets. Zhao Chuanchuan had something to do, and I also had my own things to be busy with. We agreed to meet at the state-run restaurant at 12 noon, 10, after we separated. I walked on the bustling street and carefully observed what everyone was wearing. It had been too long, and I couldn't remember clearly the popular clothes in the city in 1977. Now it seems that most of the clothes are blue and green. The most fashionable ones are Dacron, shirts, student uniforms, and khaki professional suits. In the crowd, I could often feel many eyes on me. There were also whispers of discussion. Look at what that female comrade is wearing. It's indescribably unique and beautiful. Why haven't I seen clothes of this style before? I haven't seen them sold in the department store either. Could they be foreign goods? But I haven't seen them in the friendship store either. It seems that with my current craftsmanship and aesthetics, making clothes for others is still in demand. My slightly worried heart settled down. Then I went to the Central Xinhua bookstore and had a look around. If I want to go to university, I have to take the college entrance examination. If I remember correctly, the college entrance examination will be restored at this time next year, and the exam will be held at the end of the year. If I want to catch up with the first batch of the college entrance examination, I only have less than a year and a half left. The top priority is to get the teaching materials. I walked around the bookstore but didn't find what I wanted. Then I slapped my head and remembered that they weren't allowed to be sold at this time. I sighed. I'd better leave this matter to my father to handle. He must have a way. I circled around and went to the Supply and Marketing Cooperative. On the high counter were the 4 traditional snacks: glutinous rice strips, egg cakes, walnut cookies, and snowflake cakes. But today, there was a new product on sale, sakama. This was also a big reason why there was a long queue outside. I planned to buy some and take them back for Inglian to try and coax her. When it was my turn, there was only the last portion of sakama left. I quickly handed the pastry tickets and money to the salesperson. At this time, a slender hand reached out from the side. I want the sakama. Following the sound, I saw that it was a girl wearing a blouse. She was wearing small leather shoes. And beside her stood a young man of about the same age wearing Dacron clothes. He was also wearing a Shanghai Plum Blossom brand watch on his wrist. The two of them obviously had an extraordinary status. Even though they cut in line, no one said anything. The salesperson decisively took her money and tickets and packed the sakama and handed it to her. The two of them didn't seem like they would eat such ordinary snacks. Sure enough, the girl bought the sakama but still stared at me. After looking at each other for 2 seconds, I decisively turned around and left. Most likely, they were here to pick a fight. My experiences in my previous life had long taught me to be flexible and able to yield when necessary, but the two people behind me panicked. Brother, why did she just leave like that? Normally, shouldn't she beg me to give it to her? And then I can logically state my conditions. How do I know? Hurry up and chase after her. The two of them quickly stepped forward and blocked my way. The girl frowned and looked puzzled. Hey, you're just not going to buy it anymore. You should at least say something to me. Maybe I'll give it to you if you say something. I stopped and looked at them curiously. The young man blushed for no apparent reason, and his voice also became much lower. My sister didn't mean any harm. She just wants to ask you where you had your clothes made. It was such a simple matter. But they had to go around in circles just because they couldn't put aside their airs as wealthy people. It didn't seem like they would be able to do business either. There might be a lot of troubles later, so I didn't blink an eye. An old tailor in the village made it, but he just passed away yesterday. Oh, the two of them changed their expressions at the same time, and their eyes looked a bit frightened. Well, I'm sorry. Here, this is for you. Sorry for the trouble. After saying that, They stuffed the sakama into my hand and didn't pester me anymore. Even when I talked about this matter with Zhao Chuanchuan while having a meal at the state-run restaurant, I still felt it was inexplicable and a bit funny, but soon we started talking about other things. Zhao Chuanchuan said that he earned 6 yuan today. I widened my eyes, I rubbed my hands, and before I could say anything, he put the money on the table and pushed it towards me. I don't need it. See if there's anything else you need to buy, Zhao Xiaochuan, you're simply my lucky star. In the end, all the money was spent. We went back home with 3 gin of pork, a bundle of pencils and paper, and 10 bolts of cloth, and we were successfully scolded as prodigals. 11. In the evening, I went to the neighbor's house to find Lian. She was chopping chicken feed. She looked up and saw me, her eyes lit up, but then she quickly lowered her head while working. She couldn't help but peek at what I was wearing. I put the things down, I moved closer to her and gently tugged at her sleeve. Lian, I brought you some delicious sakama. She turned her head away, and her eyes turned red again. I asked softly, do you think my clothes look nice? She instinctively wanted to nod but held back. I made it myself. I also made a set for you. She suddenly turned her head, and tears started to fall. Woo-woo. Suetsue, why are you like this? It's already bad enough that you're good-looking, and you're also kind, and on top of that, you're so amazing. Woo-woo-woo-woo. She leaned on my shoulder and cried for a while. After she calmed down, she wiped the corners of her eyes. She said with a relieved tone, I've thought it through. It's better for you two to have a good life than anything else. Anyway, he doesn't like me. It's my fault for looking like this, with my 2 eyes not symmetrical. Lian seemed very cheerful. But in fact, she was always a bit self-conscious because of her 1 single fold and 1 double fold eyes. At this time, no matter how much I comforted her, it would just become a trigger for her self-pity. Stop it, Chen Dapia Liang, Chen the beautiful, hurry up and try on the clothes to see if they fit. We're going to the primary school playground to watch a movie tonight. What, there's a movie tonight? She quickly got up and started to get ready. Watching a movie was a rare form of entertainment in this era. Chen Lian was quickly coaxed. We didn't go late, but when we arrived, the playground was already packed with people. We finally found a space to sit down near the movie screen. The movie hadn't started yet. The children were playing with shadows in front of the projector, and the adults were chatting. As they chatted, their attention turned to us. Someone exclaimed, "Is that Suetsue? How did she suddenly become so beautiful and fashionable?" Right, the one next to her is Lian. What kind of clothes are they wearing? Why haven't we seen this style before? It doesn't seem like they bought them. It looks a bit like they made them themselves. Who has such good craftsmanship? For a moment, it was noisy around us, and everyone joined the discussion. Lian stroked her braid and stood up straight confidently. Stop guessing. Suetsue made these herself. There was a sudden silence all around. 2 seconds later, it was like a pot had exploded. What? Suetsue made them? Lian, don't be kidding. How could Suetsue know how to make clothes? A discordant voice suddenly interjected from behind. It was Xia Wanyu. She was covering her mouth and laughing. Next to her, as expected, was Gu Chongxing. There were no signs of their injuries on their faces, probably because they had healed. When I looked over, Gu Chongxing looked up. And a flash of amazement passed through his eyes, then a cold smile appeared on his lips. He glanced at Xia Wanyu beside him, and it was clearly written on his face. See, I told you she would come to me on her own initiative. Now she's using such a clumsy method to attract my attention. Xia Wanyu let out a sound. Suetsue, if you had come a little earlier, you could have sat next to brother Chongxing now. Chen Lian rolled her eyes. Are you two some kind of hotcakes? Who wants to sit next to you? Suetsue made the clothes. Just because you're stupid doesn't mean you can't allow others to be smart. Xia Wanyu was taken aback. It's as if you saw her make them with your own eyes. Believe it or not. Anyway, you won't have the chance to wear them. At this time, Gu Chongxing coughed, as if he were some important person. Stop arguing, Suetsue. Don't try to save face. Blowing such a big cow just to attract my attention, it won't be good if you can't back it up later. I held back Chen Lian, who wanted to rush up and beat them, and smiled. Whether I made the clothes or not, after the movie is over, everyone can go to my house and see for themselves, and then it will be clear. Before long, the movie started, but many people's attention was no longer on the movie. Some wanted to see the fun, some were curious, and some simply loved beauty. They couldn't wait for the movie to end immediately. To be honest, I should thank the two of them for being the atmosphere setters. They created such a big momentum for me all of a sudden. 2 hours passed quickly, I went out with 2 people, and when I got home, there was a long line of people following behind me. The inside and outside of the house were surrounded by curious onlookers. Just as I was thinking about who to make a set of clothes for, the girl standing at the front had bright eyes. "Suetsue, can you make a set for me? I'll go home and get the cloth for you later. Whatever style you make it into is fine with me." I remembered who she was, Li Xiaohua, the daughter of the pig butcher at the entrance of the village. Zhao Chuanchuan learned how to slaughter pigs from her father. I smiled and agreed. I took a bolt of cloth, sketched out the pattern with a few strokes, and then sat in front of the sewing machine and started threading the needle. Suetsue. Don't you need to measure first? No need, my eyes are the ruler. With decades of experience, I can tell a person's figure just by taking a look. There was another gasp of astonishment in the crowd. Xia Wanyu muttered in a low voice, "She's overdoing it, isn't she? Don't let it turn out that she doesn't even know how to operate the sewing machine later." Gu Chongxing didn't say anything, but his eyes were also full of doubt. My hands moved extremely fast, cutting the cloth, hemming, and piecing together. My eyes followed my hands. The discussion in the room gradually died down. To wear for blind dates. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed that someone could work faster than the old tailor in the county town. Goodness, I never thought Suetsue had such great skills. Will it be very convenient for us to make clothes in the future? Xiaohua is really clever. Soon there will be so many people that we'll all have to queue up. Someone reacted and said eagerly, "Suetsue, I'll go home now to get the cloth and money. Can you make a set for me too?" "Suetsue, I want one too. I want one." "Me too," I said at first. "Don't cut in line." After getting my promise, the people around dispersed in an instant. Only Xia Wanyu and Gu Chongxing were still there. Gu Chongxing looked at me with a complicated expression. "I never thought you actually had this skill. I admit that you're indeed a bit different from other village girls now. But why didn't you say so earlier?" Xia Wanyu beside him gently pushed his arm. Gu Chongxing changed his words. "Suetsue, make a set for Wanyu too, and I'll forgive your rudeness last time and this time." Me. I stepped forward and grabbed his collar. At 1.7 meters, I was not much shorter than him. I could no longer hold back and started cursing. Seeing such arrogance really opens my eyes. What's our relationship that makes you so presumptuous? Our educated youth so great, with your half-baked knowledge? What makes you so arrogant? Let me tell you. I've endured you for a long time. Pay attention to your attitude when you talk to me. You have lofty ambitions but a lowly status. Relying on my previous liking for you, you think you can do whatever you want. That was me being blind before. Now you're not even worthy of carrying my shoes. Look at yourself in the mirror. Which part of you is better than Jia Chuanchuan? You just walk around with your head held high all day, being selfish, arrogant, and useless. A freeloading man who lives off others. You too, a scumbag and a slut, have been having an affair for a long time. You almost flattened the reed marsh, right? And you still treated me like a fool. Bah, pay back the money, 300 yuan. Otherwise, I'll report you too. Just wait." After throwing away my restraint, I finally had a good scolding. The two of them were dumbfounded. You, Zhao Tsuetsue, so it was you. Shock, fear, and anger made their faces turn all sorts of colors. They thought they had hidden it well, but they never expected that I knew everything. They never expected that I had caught them in the act and even beaten them up. But there was nothing they could do. Now that their injuries had healed, there was no evidence. Instead, I had something on them. You know, at this time, it was illegal for unmarried men and women to have sex privately, and they could be sentenced. A few days ago, the newspaper reported that a famous male movie star was sentenced to prison for having a one-night stand with a woman. Stop stuttering. Pay back the money. I want it now. Gu Chongxing panicked. But I really don't have that much money. Suetsue, do you really not care about our past feelings at all? If you don't have it, Xia Wanyu does. Xia Wanyu must have had a good life before coming to the countryside, although her mother died early. Her father was a junior high school teacher. It was just that later, there were problems in the family, so she chose to come to the countryside. In my previous life, before the college entrance examination was restored, she couldn't stand staying in the countryside and wanted to return to the city. But at that time, educated youths could only return to the city through methods such as job recruitment and examinations. Xia Wanyu spent 280 yuan to buy a temporary job in the city, while Gu Chongxing returned to the city to prepare for the college entrance examination after it was restored the following year and relied on me to support him. When she came to the countryside, She brought all her possessions. In the past year or so, you've been using mine and eating mine. Where did she need to spend any money? Xia Wanyu seemed to rely on Gu Chongqing for everything and was completely devoted to him. In fact, she was a refined egoist. She had been pushing Gu Chongqing to use his good looks to get what she wanted. She used herself to charm Gu Chongqing and used Gu Chongqing to charm me. She used everyone as stepping stones to pave the way for herself. In my previous life, that's how she went abroad to study. Hearing my words, a flash of guilt appeared in Xia Wanyu's eyes. A teenage girl's mindset hadn't been cultivated to the level it would be later. Her emotions could be seen through at a glance. Seeing this, what else didn't Gu Chongqing understand? He rubbed his forehead and his tone carried a bit of pleading. Wanyu, give it to her first. We can earn the money back later. Between going to jail and giving money. Xia Wanyu gritted her teeth and reluctantly took out a roll of big red bills from the inner pocket of her clothes and threw them in front of me. Now I don't have a single cent left. Are you satisfied? After throwing down these words, she turned around and ran away. Gu Chongqing glared at me and quickly chased after her. I counted the 3 big red bills and put them in my pocket. I felt an unprecedented sense of comfort. At this time, many girls came back with cloth in their arms. I collected the money and registered for each of them. Everyone line up. My parents had just come back from work and met a few old ladies at the door. They said enviously, "Oh, your family will enjoy a good life in the future. Suetsue is so capable at such a young age. A tailor, how impressive." My father looked blank and just smiled. My mother subconsciously said, "That's for sure. My daughter has been smart since she was a child. She can do everything." After the people left, the two of them stared at the long queue in the yard. They asked in a low voice, "When did our daughter learn this skill?" "Do you know?" "I don't know." Unable to figure it out, they simply stopped thinking about it. My mother said, "It's good to know more things. Why worry so much?" My father said, "That's true." After that day, more and more people from the surrounding villages came to me to make clothes. I couldn't make a fortune, but I had a steady stream of small earnings, and life became more and more comfortable. Sometimes when I was too busy, I would give some simple tasks to my mother and Inglian. However, my mother worked for free, while I would pay Inglian by the piece. At first, Etli had quite a few opinions about this, but when she saw Inglian bringing money home, she stopped talking. Even when she saw me, she was very polite. 13. At this time, except for those who were teaching children to read and write, not many people were seriously studying across the country. Teaching materials were even less valuable than toilet paper. My father had to go to a lot of trouble to get 3 sets of teaching materials from the black market. When he learned that I proposed to start studying again, after confirming that I wasn't delirious from a fever, the whole family, along with my adopted elder sister Chen Inglian, sat down for a simple meeting. My father, do it secretly, don't get reported. My mother, learn more. Anyway, it won't be wrong. Zhao Chuan, I'll listen to whatever Tsuetsue says. Chen Inglian, I support it. Whatever Tsuetsue does is right. Me, I didn't expect that I didn't need to persuade them at all. We had the teaching materials and the students, but we still lacked a teacher. The little schooling we had in the countryside before was at most equivalent to not having graduated from junior high school. It was extremely difficult to systematically learn junior and senior high school knowledge within a year and a half and get into a good university. I myself had a bit of a foundation. In my previous life, in order to get closer to Gu Chongqing, I attended night school for a few years and studied part-time to get an adult junior college degree. Although this degree was like a piece of waste paper in Gu Chongqing's eyes, it at least made me literate. It was Zhao Chuan and Chen Inglian who worried me. After thinking for several days, I finally dug out a person from my dusty memory, in my previous life, in order to help Gu Chongqing get a teaching position in the university. I tried to pull strings everywhere. Among them, there was a famous old professor in the finance department. Although he seemed cold on the surface, he had a warm heart. When he learned that I was from Kaiten village, he gave me a lot of help. Later, I found out that he had worked in Chishui village next door for several years. When paying respects to a master, one should show the proper attitude. Zhao Chuan carried 20 caddies of refined flour on his back. I carried 10 caddies of pork. And Chen Inglian brought 2 bolts of cloth and 2 caddies of white sugar. The 3 of us crossed the mountain and came to a thatched cottage along a small path. We searched for a long time but didn't see anyone. When we walked into the pigsty, we finally found the old man lying on the ground. Zhao Chuan quickly stepped forward. After confirming that the old man had fainted due to hypoglycemia, he carried the old man back into the house. After making a cup of sugar water and feeding it to him, the old man slowly woke up. Although he was called an old man, he was actually only in his 50s. It was just that the white hair at his temples made him look older. Seeing us, he asked calmly, "What are you looking for me for?" After learning our intention, he waved his hand, lay down on the wooden plank bed, and closed his eyes directly. "I can't teach. Take your things back. I'm just a useless old man with no skills at all." I opened tentatively, "I'm a tailor and can make clothes for you for free." He didn't react. "I'm a very good cook and can bring you meals every day." He still didn't react. "There's a doctor in my family who can treat you for free." He remained unmoved, thinking of something. I took a deep breath and whispered in his ear, "Before long, the college entrance examination will be restored, and you'll be able to go home." He suddenly opened his eyes. I touched my nose and said, "I heard it. But it's very likely. How will we know if we don't try?" After a long while, he finally spoke, his tone complicated. "You little girl really dare to talk." Perhaps he had a glimmer of hope in his heart, or perhaps he softened again. The old man finally nodded in agreement, so we would set aside free time every day to come and study for 4 or 5 hours. Later, the empty mountain could often hear the old man's loud scolding. "I've explained it several times. Why still don't you understand? Don't even talk about getting into college. With your comprehension ability, it's even hard to feed pigs." A strict teacher produces outstanding students, and the teaching effect became increasingly remarkable. Although we focused on studying, we didn't neglect making money. Before we knew it, we had saved a lot in our small treasury. One evening when we came back, Zhao Chuanchuan said that the patient he had been treating saw the clothes he was wearing and wanted to invite me to take her measurements and make some custom-made clothes for her. So the next day, I went to the city with Zhao Chuanchuan. We walked into an old Soviet-style building. The interior decoration was brand new, and it was obvious that the owner was wealthy. The hostess, in her 20s, came gracefully wearing a unique lawn dress. Her facial features had an indescribable charm. A red mole between her eyebrows added to her charm. When I saw her face clearly, I couldn't control my excitement. Zhang Yakin, the most famous movie star in the 1970s and 1980s. I was once very obsessed with her movies, and my room was covered with her posters. It was said that she got married at a young age to a high-ranking official, although she was only slightly famous at this time. By the end of 1978, she would become famous all over the country with a Peking opera movie called Green Seedlings, and at the same time, set off a fashion craze across the country. Zhang Yakin was very amiable. She smiled and waved to me. "Don't be polite, sit down and have a cup of tea, let's talk slowly." When she learned that I was 17 years old, not only did she not show any doubt about my ability, but she also praised me for having great talent at such a young age. She talked a lot about her ideas and requirements, hoping that I could make them according to her description. After she finished, she said a bit helplessly, "Look at me, I've talked so much again. Maybe my ideas are too complicated and imaginative. I've looked for many tailors, but they're either too conservative or their thinking is rigid. In short, none of them can achieve the effect I want." "It's okay, Tsue. You can give it a try first. Just do it as you see fit, don't be pressured." Taking advantage of having lived one more life, I knew her preferences and the popular styles in the future very well. While Zhao Chuanchuan was giving her a follow-up examination, I picked up a pen and paper next to me and started drawing the design. When the examination was over, I had also finished drawing. She was stunned for a moment when she saw it, then stood up and stamped her feet in surprise. "Goodness, Tsue. This is exactly the effect I want. When can we start? I'll accept any price." "I've actually watched Sister Yakin's movies. I really like you. The price is the same as usual. As for the construction period, don't worry, I'll give Sister Yakin priority." I showed my sincerity. Sure enough, her eyes lit up even more. There was 2 parts less of politeness and 3 parts more of intimacy. Actually, I had my own selfish motives and plans. When I grow bigger in the future and have my own clothing brand, building a good relationship with her is equivalent to having the best promotional spokesperson. Even an ordinary piece of clothing can be made popular by her, and I won't have to worry about customers in the future. At this time, a young boy and girl walked in. The boy started acting spoiled as soon as he entered the door. "Auntie, is the little miracle doctor here? I haven't been feeling well recently. Let him take a look at me too." The girl was not to be outdone and said in a soft voice, Auntie, is the little tailor here? I don't have any clothes to wear recently. Let her make a couple of sets for me too. Jean Yakin looked at them tenderly and said with a smile, there they are. The three of us turned our heads and our eyes met. Seeing me, they said in unison, it's you, me, what a coincidence. They were the siblings who had snatched my sakama in the supply and marketing cooperative that day. Jean Yakin was confused and asked, what, do you know each other, this time? The three of us said in unison, we don't. They were guilty about their impolite behavior and were afraid that I would tell on them. I was guilty about the lie I had casually told. Jia Chuan, however, saw it all clearly. As if to make up for it, the boy looked at me and then blushed silently. Auntie, I was just shocked that this little tailor comrade is so good-looking. Jean Yakin, me, Jia Chuan didn't say anything. When he was writing the prescription for the boy after taking his pulse, he kept adding Rhizoma coctidus to it, 14 as the seasons change. With cold winters and hot summers passing by, autumn is for harvest and winter is for storage. In August 1977, on an ordinary day, the village broadcast station came the news that set the whole country ablaze with excitement. All workers, peasants, educated youth who went to the countryside and those who have returned to the cities, demobilized soldiers, and recent graduates who meet the requirements can apply for the examination. Candidates should have a high school graduate level of education or equivalent. Voluntary registration and unified examination are required. For a time, the news of the resumption of the college entrance examination became a hot topic of discussion across the country, and textbooks became something that people scrambled for. Some were delighted, while others were worried. 4 months of preparation time was simply not enough for many people who had neglected their studies. In order to consolidate our review and have a greater chance of success, we put everything aside in the last 4 months. The empty hills were filled with the figures of people eager for knowledge, ranging from teenagers to middle-aged and elderly people. They looked eagerly at the old man in the middle who was trying his best to give them lectures. That was the hope that rekindled their future. By the end of 1977, with the arrival of the first winter snow, 6 million candidates from all over the country successively entered the examination rooms. This largest-scale examination in world history lasted for more than a month before coming to an end. When filling out the college application, I applied for the design major. Since I came from an unorthodox background, I still needed some training from the formal system. Jia Chuan wanted to study medicine but was not sure whether to choose traditional Chinese medicine or Western medicine. I strongly encouraged him to study Western medicine and become a surgeon. Jia Chuan had a great talent for slaughtering pigs. He could wield the knife steadily, accurately, and fiercely. With just a touch, he could tell which bone it was, and even before the blood flowed out, he had already finished slaughtering a pig. He was definitely a good candidate for a surgeon. More importantly, several hospitals in the country had already established plastic surgery departments. If I remember correctly, within 5 years, cosmetic surgery would become popular in big cities, presenting a great business opportunity. Chen Lian resolutely decided to study finance from the very beginning, while waiting for the results. I continued to focus on my tailoring business. Jia Chuan continued to see patients as usual, and the way Chen Lian relieved her anxiety was to go to the village entrance to listen to gossip. Cui, do you know that Gu Chongxing and Xia Wanyu didn't take this college entrance examination? I heard that they had a falling out 2 days before the exam. Xia Wanyu was caught red-handed by Gu Chongxing while dating the son of the steel factory director. The three of them had an argument on the spot. In a moment of carelessness, Gu Chongxing pushed Xia Wanyu down. Guess what? Then she kept shouting that her stomach hurt, and in the end, she actually had a miscarriage when she went to the hospital. Whose child was it? I don't know. I heard that they moved the next day. They probably didn't have the face to stay in the city anymore and may have gone to another city. It was really a pity. The gossip in the village updated quickly, and everyone was enthusiastically welcoming the new atmosphere. Soon, they forgot about these two people. In April 1978, the last admission notice was delivered to Aunt Li's house in Kaitan village. Chen Lian's hanging heart finally settled down. She hugged me tightly and wept with joy. Great, Cui, I can finally go to Beijing with you guys. The day before we set off for Beijing, a letter sent from Beijing arrived at my house first. The envelope clearly stated the recipient's name, Jiang Xinian. Only then did I know that Jia Chuan had a name before he came to my house. He was a descendant of the imperial physicians in the palace. but he couldn't use that name. The general content of the letter was that Zhao Chuanchuan's grandfather was on the verge of death and hoped that Zhao Chuanchuan could go to Beijing overnight to recognize his ancestors. We hurriedly packed our bags and set off. However, the journey was long. After taking a train for 3 days and 3 nights, by the time we arrived, his grandfather had already been buried. The Jiang family had a large family business and many descendants, a mixed group of people, and many were eager to get a share of the pie after the old man passed away. Zhao Chuanchuan's parents died early, and no one genuinely welcomed him back, so we were sent away without even having a cup of tea. Fortunately, it wasn't a complete loss. They gave Zhao Chuanchuan an abandoned factory building in Beijing and 50,000 yuan. A little bit leaked from the fingers of the rich was enough for us at the bottom to live on for a lifetime. Zhao Chuanchuan said that what was his was mine. It was really like having someone bring a pillow when you were sleepy. With the ready-made venue and funds, I brought my parents over. With all our efforts, we opened a garment factory and established our own clothing brand. In September 1978, Suizue Garment Factory was officially launched. Thanks to my relationship with the leading actress Zhang Yaken, Suizue Garment Factory became the clothing and prop supplier for the crew of the drama Green Seedlings. At the end of 1978, Green Seedlings became a huge hit. For a time, people all over the country were imitating the outfits of the main characters. Suizue brand clothing officially came into the view of the national public and made its debut. I helped him go from a down-and-out educated youth in the countryside who had lost both parents and had nothing to a decent and well-known old professor in a prestigious university today. It took the lead in producing batwing shirts, floral shirts, suits, sportswear, red skirts, jeans, flared pants, knitted sweaters, and other clothes. Suizue brand clothing became completely well-known across the country, and everyone regarded wearing Suizue brand clothes as a fashionable trend, from head to toe. For clothes of all sizes, Suizue brand covered everything, providing a complete range. In 1983, Beijing Suizue Garment Factory promoted and sold 300,000 yuan worth of clothing to the market on average every day, and at its peak, it reached 600,000 to 700,000 yuan. Following the trend of the times, after graduation, we went to Shanghai to continue our development. In 1986, Suizue Cosmetic and Plastic Surgery Hospital was officially opened. Artificial nasal bridges, artificial breasts, double-fold eyelids created through surgery, etc., cost more than 300 yuan, but there were still a continuous stream of customers every day. At the same time, in a certain operating room of the hospital, Ms. Chen Yinglian, the general manager, also got her other double-fold eyelid in her life. One night, Zhao Chuanchuan and I had just finished exercising. He suddenly buried his head on my shoulder and rubbed gently, pleading, "Suizue, when can we get married? Let me check." I took out the notebook where I recorded important matters. It said, in 1993, buy a house in Pudong, Shanghai. In 1995, buy a Sihiyuan in Beijing. In 2001, buy Matai stocks. In 2009, buy bitcoins. In 2010, invest in mobile phones. In 2019, invest in the internet. I smiled and replied to him, "Sorry. Your request has been politely rejected by your girlfriend. She plans to make money first." As soon as the words fell, in a dizzying moment, I was pressed underneath him again. The unrestrained strength showed the man's resentment. "Got it, Mr. Zhao.